Morning, everyone. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Fort Myers Beach Local Planning Agency. It's Tuesday, February 13th. Happy Valentine's Day in advance. It's 9 a.m., and if you would stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Where is the pledge? Where's the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we all have open minds, open hearts, and do our best for the future of our town. Amen. Amen. Well, you know. Okay. May I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of January 9th, 2024?
So moved. Second.
Is there any, there's a motion by Jim and seconded by Dawn. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing no discussion, everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And no one disapproves. The motion carries unanimously. The next item is public comment, but before I go any further, let me tell you, if anyone is here in advance to speak to the COP for 450 Harbor Court, which is the Rude Shrimp, or the Pink Shell, both of those items are going to be pulled from the agenda to a date uncertain. You can still speak at public comment, but those hearings won't happen today. So I'm sorry that you didn't know that in advance. Neither did I. I knew they were going to be continued, but I thought we'd move ahead with the hearings. So if you do have something to say about either one of those and you'd like to speak at public comment right now, you may. You have 3 minutes. Is there anybody who'd like to speak? On any agenda item? Nothing?
I have some.
You do? Okay, Amy.
Okay, first is Grace Workman. First only.
I am not a public speaker. But anyway, my name is Grace Workman. I live at 194 Coconut Drive. I've lived here for 64 years, and my husband and I bought a house on Coconut Drive in 1987. It's a single-family house on a single-family road, and I would like to ask about putting 5 more stories on top of my house with 5 more houses, all single-family. I have a big driveway that could accommodate the cars. They're modest homes, and they'd be for local residents, not tourists. And I'm asking this because insurance costs and inflation have gotten so high, it's going to be hard for this poor old widow woman to make it. With the help from the extra rentals, it would be a lot easier. I'd like to add that I love Fort Myers Beach, and the developers that are asking for a lot more density on Fort Myers Beach are using the island just as a vehicle for their own wealth. They always say they won't add more traffic, and they do, because I know they do, because I know how much traffic I add. And for them to say that the people will go to their resorts or their condos and stay there and not travel around on the island is just a great big old pile of heifer dust. All of them will go to Publix. They'll ride up and down the street looking at the hurricane damage. They'll go shopping. They'll go out to eat, they'll go out for drinks and hors d'oeuvres, and probably even stop in a few real estate offices to find out how much it would cost to buy a home now for their retirement. I'm asking for this density because we're giving so much of it away to everybody else. I feel like I'd like to have a little bit too. And I invite all of you to come over and have drinks on my porch. Don't worry, the neighbors and my neighbors and friends and your constituents won't think that this is a bribery. I'm just trying to figure out a way to get this very unsavory idea that I have approved. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.
That's all I have signed
That's
up.
all. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Anyone? Yeah, it would be hard to beat that. So much for your non-ability to speak in public, Grace. Okay, so we'll close the public comment, and Nancy? So these first two hearings for the pink shell and the rude shrimp are being continued to a date certain.
So they've been withdrawn from the.
Well, never mind, never mind. Judy Hadia is coming up.
Is that okay if I speak?
It is absolutely, Judy.
My
It's
name
nice
is
to see you.
Judy Hadia. I live at 400 Bayland Road. I own Tri-Power Vacation Rentals and Century 21 Tri-Power Realty. I just wanted to say a few words about the Widgeon property and the variance that has been requested. It seems to me as though the neighboring property owner would have a right.
Judy, can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Are you going to stay for that hearing? Are you going to be here for that hearing?
I can be.
Well, it's just that if you're giving testimony, it really should be during that hearing.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Sorry
All right.
to intrude.
And we certainly can.
Thanks, Anita.
Thank you, Judy. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak? Okay. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your next item on the agenda for a public hearing is a proposed ordinance, and I'll read the title. An ordinance of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending Article 4 of Chapter 6 of the Land Development Code of the town of Fort Myers Beach to 1, require all manufactured homes installed or replaced in special flood hazard areas to be elevated at or
Wait,
above.
Nancy, can you hold on? I was asking you specifically about A and B. The pink shell and the rude shrimp. Do we need a motion to continue them to a date uncertain?
No, they're being withdrawn.
They're completely
So they're
withdrawn.
just-
So we
yes.
don't have to do anything.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And hold on one second. Jane, go ahead.
I don't have a mic. Can we possibly move C to below the other three variances so that the people that are here don't have to stay through all the variances and then pick it up from there?
That's fine with me. Does anybody object to that? Okay. So we're going to move C down to below F. You'll have to remind me to come back to it. All right, so now we have three variances, and Nancy, now I'll turn it over to you because these are quasi-judicial cases, and Nancy will give her
For the benefit of the public, a little bit of an explanation regarding these three variance requests. The variance requests are quasi-judicial in nature, and this requires that the public hearing before the LPA comply with procedural requirements that have been established in Florida law and in our land development code. So these quasi-judicial proceedings, they're going to be less formal than proceedings before a circuit court, but they're going to be more formal than the remainder of the meeting. And they follow basic standards of due process that require certain notices, application of the correct standards, and decisions that are made on competent and substantial evidence that's presented to the LPA in either written documents or through oral testimony. So the LPA will evaluate the testimony and the information that it's been provided for each item, and then they're going to draw a conclusion as to whether or not the criteria in the Land Development Code or in state law has been satisfied. So pure speculation or just your opinion that is not based on competent substantial evidence would not legally be considered by the LPA in evaluating an item, as the courts have viewed this to be not to be competent substantial evidence. However, testimony by professionals who have been qualified as experts in a particular area have been recognized as providing competent and substantial evidence to quasi-judicial boards. In addition, neighbors and residents who have fact-based information, not opinion, not speculation, or who have personal knowledge of a situation upon which they are testifying, the courts have viewed that as being competent substantial evidence, which would be considered by the LPA. So if you intend to speak and provide oral testimony, please keep these comments in mind. And when you come forward, please state your name clearly for the record and whether or not you've been sworn in and your qualifications or your interest in the matter. So Again, some of the formality that we will be adhering to in this proceeding is whether or not the three items, the three variances, have been properly advertised. And I'll defer to our town clerk. Have they been properly advertised?
Yes, they have.
Okay. Another little bit of formality. I need to ask the LPA members if anyone has a conflict of interest which would prohibit them from voting on any of the three variances before you today.
Does anyone have a conflict of interest? Doug?
No, ma'am.
Don?
No conflict, but I do have knowledge of the one because I own the property and live there
The Widgeon Terrace?
5 years, right? And I'm, I would say, friends with the neighboring.
So we
Okay.
can make that disclosure as part of the
Ex parte.
ex parte communications.
Any conflicts, Patrick?
None.
How about you, Jane?
I was the realtor on the sale.
Okay. I have no conflicts. Jim?
No conflict.
Scott?
None.
Okay.
So Florida law has some specific requirements as far as a conflict that would prohibit a LPA member from voting, and that would require a current special benefit that they are receiving different from benefits received by the town and the other residents as a whole. Jane, you mentioned that you were involved in the sale, but that is a past sale?
Right.
You currently are not representing
Not representing anyone.
anyone. Okay, so under Florida law, that I don't believe would be considered to be a voting conflict, so you are eligible to participate.
Thank you.
Again, a little bit more formality in this proceeding is the requirement for the swearing in of witnesses. So anyone who is present and would like to provide oral testimony to the LPA, if you would please rise and raise your right hand, and the clerk will administer an oath.
This is anybody who's going to testify to any of the three cases.
Including public comment.
Yes, including, just, it's an all swear-in.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right. All parties have been sworn.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, we can now begin the three public hearings on the variances.
Okay.
Can you
So-
read the title?
I will read the title. It is Resolution 23-190, VAR 202-30162, 21391 Widgeon Terrace. It's a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving or approving with conditions or denying variance 202-30162. Two variances from LDC Table 34-3 to decrease the required side yard setback by 2.18 feet from the required 10 feet, and to decrease required water body setback by 14.39 feet from the required 25 feet in the RC zoning district for the property located at 21391 Widgeon Terrace, providing for clarifications as necessary, providing for conflicts of law, Scrivener's errors, severability, and providing for an effective date. May I ask if any LPA member has ex parte communications? Scott?
I do not.
Jim?
No ex parte.
I have none. Jane?
I have none.
Patrick?
I do. I met with the neighbor to the north and walked his property and looked at the adjacent property and spoke with him about his concerns.
Okay. Don, any ex parte?
I have, again, with the neighboring property, Robert Helstein, have had discussions about his concerns.
Okay. And Doug, how about you?
No, ma'am.
All right. Thank you all very much. Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. 21391 Widgeon Terrace is requesting a variance. Well, Todd Plaisted, the owner of 21391 Widgeon Terrace, is requesting a variance from Table 34-3 and 34-638D3C3 of the LDC for the construction of an elevated pool and screen enclosure. The applicant is requesting a variance of 2.18 feet from the 10-foot side setback required for the 108-foot wide property for a side setback of 7.8 feet. The property abuts an unseawalled water body, which requires a 20-foot 25-foot, I apologize, rear setback from the mean high water line for any structure. The proposed pool would require a variance of 10.6 feet for a rear setback distance of 14.4 feet from the mean high water on this 58-foot deep lot. All structures must meet the same setback as primary residences on a non-seawalled water lot, and this is an elevated pool, which is required to meet the primary residence setbacks also. This property is zoned RC and is toward the end of a street in the relatively unique Widgeon Terrace neighborhood. Widgeon Terrace properties include a large portion of the right-of-way within the individual lots and tend to be less deep than the code requirements due to the narrow peninsula which makes up the neighborhood. Many homes and pools in the neighborhood appear to be nonconforming in regard to setbacks. The depth of the lot and the right-of-way easement along the front portion of the property significantly impact the ability to construct a pool on this property on the rear of the property and without a reduction to the required water body setback. The existing home on the lot has a side setback of 24.5 feet. The applicant is requesting the proposed pool meet the side setback requirement that was in place on the lot prior to the code amendment requiring side setbacks to be 15% of the lot width. That was the code that was in place during the time that the applicant began design concept of the pool. Due to several concerns regarding changes to the staff report to clarify the request is for an elevated pool, and due to neighbor concerns regarding notice, the town council asked that the case be reheard by the LPA. Since the hearing, the applicant has provided a landscaping plan, which staff included in the application documents, and staff has required an additional condition that would require the installation of landscaping to buffer the elevated pool from the neighbor. I am available for any questions you may have, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Are there questions for Sarah?
I
Don?
just have one, just point of clarification. So the only changes since our last, because we heard this last month and voted on it. So is the landscape condition that staff, is that?
The landscape condition is different. The staff report was also amended. I reviewed the staff report the night before the hearing. I mean, I edit the staff reports, but I hadn't actually reviewed the entire case. When I looked at it, I felt that there were some things missing. That morning of the meeting, I spoke with the applicant and realized that the pool was elevated. So I did include that in the presentation to the LPA, but it was not in the staff report. And I added that into the staff report when it went to town council. However, there were concerns because there had been changes from the staff report with the LPA and the town council.
Okay, one more question.
Please.
And the elevation of the pool, because you said you didn't recognize it was elevated, is it elevated to the height of the current
The first living
decks,
level.
Or is, okay, so it's not any higher than the current deck level? Or the house floor level, basically?
It's the house floor level, from
Okay.
what I understand.
Okay,
I have not seen an elevation of the home, though.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Patrick?
Yes, with regard to the elevation, is there a proposed pool cage on top of the pool?
Yes, at this time, there is a proposed pool cage.
That'll be additional structure there. And then, what I saw in the recent plans, we had a pool depicted, but we also had an outdoor kitchen. So is that?
There
also
are
gonna be up
amenities
on the-
associated with the pool deck,
Okay, so
yes.
it's not just for a pool, it's for outdoor kitchen and for pool.
The applicant may be able to speak better to specifically what they're proposing there.
Okay.
The frontage on the waterfront, it doesn't go past where the structure is that correct?
That's correct. It is even with the rear of the house.
And the front of the, rear and front?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Doug, did you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay. How about you, Jim?
No question.
Scott?
I do not.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here? Mr. Brandt, were you sworn in previously?
I'm not giving testimony, really, but you want to swear me in, I'll swear in.
I don't care if you're sworn or not, but I think Nancy will. That's, yeah, I understand, I understand.
Go ahead and swear in.
Bob, come over here, we're going to swear you in. And Mr. Brandt has already been qualified as a witness previously, or what is it, Nancy?
Expert.
An expert. He's an expert. He's been qualified previously. But
Thank you.
Nancy, would you like to swear Mr. Brandt in? Amy can.
Okay, over
Let me
here.
say it's nice to see you all again.
It's nice to see you too, Bob.
Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year to you all. I think
The
it
same
was
to you.
last year we saw each other, wasn't it?
Yes. Bob, can you hold on one second, because I know I'll forget this by the end of the meeting. You know, Amy, could we, on the agenda, could we know, oh, it does say Bay Oaks Rec Center. Never mind. I didn't even notice that. Go ahead. Neither
Thank you.
did you.
It says the address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you and good morning. Well, we're here again on the same request. I'm recalling back to when I built my pool on Estero back in 2000. The setback was 7.5 back then, and it's been bounced around a couple times. So I think we're only concerned with the side setback. My clients were forced to jump through a bunch of hoops because of the rear setback. We had to go to the Army Corps of Engineers. We had to get the EPA to approve it. Everything was done. This process has been going on, I think, since 2021. So anyway, we got all those approvals. We came before you folks a couple months ago, and it got approved. Apparently, one of the neighbors went to the town council meeting and objected because he said he did not get notice and couldn't be here, so now they've sent it back to you. So I'm going to stand on the same platform I stood on before. I really don't have much more to add. We tried to put a package together to show you what we're talking about. You know, everybody on the beach can see everybody else's pool. Like I said, when I built my house, my neighbors could see my pool, I could see their pool, probably within 35 feet. So this is no exception. The neighbor is complaining because his garage apartment kind of overlooks the pool or is adjacent to the pool, but he has a house to live in. He doesn't have to live in the garage apartment. So I'm not sure exactly what his complaint is, but we're prepared to do the landscaping as recommended by staff and this previous speaker. We tried to meet with them to get that, come to some kind of consensus, and we thought may have had it resolved. But in any event, we stand on what we came before you before.
What was the but, Bob?
I'm sorry?
You said you thought we may have had it resolved, but was,
Well, they met. I wasn't there. They met and they talked about it, and they offered to put a landscaping buffer up. So, and you know, if it's the noise issue, we have a noise ordinance. So you simply, if you have a problem with your neighbor, you call your neighbor and say, can you put the noise down? And if they don't comply, you call the sheriff. That's not an issue that we should even be discussing here. It's not a hotel. It's a private residence. They don't rent it out. They're here half of the year, or maybe a little bit more than half of the year. I don't believe they have any children. Oh, you do? Okay, so other than that, I really don't see the problem with the pool, but I guess that's why we're here. So the first variance is the one from the back bay, and I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is the side setback. There's no place else to put this pool, as you can see by the pictures. We've explored that. There was an issue about the pool pump and the electronics and all that. So we moved those. We moved those under the house, because initially those were going to be, we were going to ask for a setback for those too. But we moved those under the house, so no issue there, no setback required, no noise. So they've done everything they possibly can, and all they're trying to do is improve their property and have a pool when they come down. Any questions? And they're behind me, by the way, for the record. So if you want to talk directly to them, I don't have an issue with that.
thank you, Bob. Patrick, you're leaning in. You have a question?
I've got a little commentary and questions. When you guys first came to us, I was one of the people that supported the application, voted for it. But what's been brought to my attention is there is a very significant material change, something that was not indicated in your application whatsoever. It's that the pool is elevated, okay? And that changes the whole thing. There is a big difference between a pool being at ground level and a pool being elevated. And have you been around this town for a while? I believe you have.
I've lived on the beach for over 20 years. In fact, our law firm was the first city attorneys here.
So
back
do
in
you
the
recall
90s.
about?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the beach. And
Yeah.
in my opinion, Only an idiot would put a ground level pool in.
Okay.
My pool was
Well,
ground level down
let's-
here,
let's not-
and it's been inundated with water 3 or 4
Okay,
times.
well, please answer the question, okay? Were you around about 10, 15 years ago when we had issues with people building elevated pools on these big homes? Do you recall
I
that,
was
that
around
issue?
then, yeah.
Okay. And you recall the issue that what it does essentially is it creates a wall and blocks views to the bay for the neighbor property. And if you recall, what was decided is it does indeed block the views. Therefore, we want those pools to meet the primary structure setback. And that's how we dealt with it. It was a very controversial issue. There was a lot of discussion about it. If you're at ground level, you don't obstruct anybody's view. Very big difference.
But if I was to build an addition onto my house, that
You
would
would-
be the same
You would need
If you look at
variances.
the drawing,
You-
if you look at the drawing here, you'll see that that's not the case. here. There's
Sir, do you
no-
realize you're asking for variances? You could build according to code tomorrow, no problem. But what you're doing here is you're asking for an exception to the typical rules, okay?
I'm not aware of any variance required to build an elevated pool. If I'm wrong,
No,
then we'll
no, what I'm
resubmit.
saying is, you could build a structure, yeah, you could expand the house. You would have to meet the rear setback, and you would have to meet the side setback, okay? So same thing with the pool, you're coming in and you're asking for variances. You are not consistent with code.
You understand that the building is here, and the pool is going to be here.
Completely.
So any view that we'd be obstructing with the pool is already obstructed with the house.
No,
Yeah.
no. I went to the site, sir.
You can
And
look at the
and And
drawings.
I sat on the deck that overlooks the bay from the neighbor.
We have pictures. We'd be glad to show them to you.
Well, it was,
Walked up on their deck too, so they invited us over.
Only the screen.
Wait, you have to speak on the microphone, but hold on 1 second. I just need a clarification. Sarah, in our original meeting, did you not tell us that it was an elevated pool?
I believe
Yeah.
we,
Yeah,
sorry.
yes. In the
I-
original, it was stated that it was an elevated pool, but that was news that I
We knew
received that
exactly.
morning. It wasn't clear in the
Look,
application.
I might have missed it, but I read
Easy.
I read the full packet. Nowhere in the packet did it say it. And I did talk to Sarah, and I called her yesterday, and I said, was it mentioned? She goes, I found out the day of, and I mentioned it real quick at
In
the
the
introduction.
hearing.
But the materials did not state whatsoever that the pool was going to be elevated.
Okay.
And I actually went back last night and went through all the application materials. Nowhere in there does it state that it was going to be elevated.
If I-
Okay.
And this is not the first elevated pool in the neighborhood, by the way, but in any event, you see where the house is to the right of the picture? That's where the pool's going to go.
What about their second deck on the side?
The extent, I
The
don't
one
think
on
the
the front.
extended deck goes
Yeah,
past the house, does it?
There's one on the front of the
there's
house.
There's one that's angled, triangular.
You have
that's
another
looking at the
picture in
bay.
here, because I saw it, that shows the views. I think the one with the arrows off the front and the back deck, where is that at? I just looked at it a second ago, sorry. Page 16? Yeah, that's, there you go. Well, there's a,
Go back.
I mean,
one.
there's a view. Keep going.
Okay.
So you see a rear deck, and there's a triangular deck over there, and their view arrows and their viewpoints do not
And
go
you
from
don't-
that secondary deck. It just goes from the rear deck.
You don't think he has a view already all the way
Page
around there?
number 8. Please go to page number 8. I think that'll show it.
Yeah, see,
It's like the second or, well, in this packet, it's like the 8th page.
Yeah.
It shows them out both. Nope, one more, I think. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah, it has white arrows on mine.
Listen, okay. If you're going to speak, you have to speak into the
For the
microphone.
reminder.
Thank you.
I'm Kelly Moore. I reside at 21391 Widgeon Terrace.
Thank you, Kelly.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm a little nervous, but
Don't be nervous.
I can't believe it.
Kelly, do you have this slide?
That is the slide, and what happened is we don't have our office put in yet, so I had to go to Office Max, and so using my school teacher ability, I took some white out and I drew that on there.
It was a smart idea.
That was the only way, but I couldn't get it to do that for the slideshow. I apologize, but I thought that might be helpful to do that.
Right.
And with it being testimony and, honor oath, I take that quite seriously, being a school teacher. And that's why I felt it was necessary to have all these pictures involved, to actually have you feel like you are at our house. And I invite you to Todd and our house to actually walk around, to see it, to go stand on their decks, to go stand on our property. I do have an intro, but I'm not sure when to start it, so if you could just guide me that way.
You're welcome to speak now, but if you'll hold on one second, Kelly, I just wanted to see if Dawn's question was answered.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think it is. I was trying to help Patrick, but the deck that he was speaking of is on the, it's mangroves, but it's on the pond side. Is that correct?
Yeah, they've answered the question. I'll add some commentary later. My concern is, look, this was brought before us. There was no mention of it. There was no mention of the outdoor kitchen on top of that. I think we're entitled to get the full facts when we review and make a decision. And at least for me, it is a material change, and I can see where, they're asking for a pool. That's the only location that works. I was under the impression it was going to be a ground level pool, and it was going to be a pool only. Whereas now it's a full structure with a deck and an outdoor kitchen and a pool cage on top of that. So to me, that's a material change.
What was your name? Thank you, Patrick. Just so you know, our existing deck that we already have is already used for what we call a outdoor kitchen area. So when you state that it is different than what we're already doing, you are incorrect, because we have a little outdoor area already that's been there since we purchased the house, and that would only be on the same level and the same things right there in that area. And we'll go into the details of that, so you absolutely know 100% the difference between what's happening now and what will happen different. We just thought we would label the areas so you would be aware of it. But full transparency here from us.
Kelly, why don't you start with your intros? Just let's sort of double back and start, and then if we have questions afterwards, we'll ask them.
Oh, I gotta go this way, sorry. Okay.
And I apologize, I have a tendency to call everybody by their first name, so is that okay with you?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Is it okay with you, Bob?
Bob isn't answering right.
I'm gonna start from the beginning.
That's right.
My kids never stare at me like adults do.
We're not really staring.
We're not really adults either.
Good morning, my name is Kelly Moore. Todd Place and I reside at 21391 Ridgeon Terrace. Please forgive me if my voice shakes and I don't peek up at you. I just get very nervous speaking in front of people, but having the opportunity to talk to you all today about our pool proposal is very important to us and our family, our 3 adult children. Todd considers himself to be part Minnesotan and part Floridian, as he has been back and forth since the 70s to his family's condo in Bonita Springs, which he shared throughout the years with his 3 siblings. As a couple, Todd and I fell in love with the town of Fort Myers Beach. So in 2021, we purchased our own home on Widgeon Terrace, also known as Flamingo Harbor. It's a small HOA in a private gated area on the south end of Fort Myers Beach. On this slide, you'll see the red star, and it says where we live. If you look to the left, that is the very end of the peninsula, and that whole area, including the little white building there, their boathouse, all the way to their 4 buildings, and then on the other side is their other dock. They have 2 docks, one on the Gulf side and one on the Bay side. Beautiful views. They have over 7 to 10 observation decks, and I'll show you that. So they have beautiful views. In my opinion, Their house is absolutely amazing, and I just told them the other day just how blessed they are. It's beautiful. Our HOA is located on a narrow peninsula, which includes 14 homes close in proximity with each other, with inconsistent property lines, non-conforming setbacks, varying house layouts with pool areas, and native trees creating natural border lines between each home. 12 out of the 14 homes in the HOA have pools. In 2021, we purchased our home with an elevated blueprint pool plan. We hired a pool company. We hired Robert Brandt as our attorney to assist us with the legalities of obtaining a variance. This is my first pool. I've never had a pool before. I'm super excited about it. We shared our pool blueprint plans with both of our neighbors. Two things we didn't foresee in 2021 after purchasing it. Number one, our pool company would have a difficult time getting materials for our proposed pool due to the COVID delays. And number two, our one neighbor would be super excited for us, and the other one was not. Shortly after sharing our blueprints with Robert, he sent us an email stating he was not in favor of our proposed pool plan, but thrilled to have us as neighbors. He also stated that we would be disappointed with how we utilize the space on our property, noting he had 30 years of experience in selling outdoor furniture. What the Helsteins may not be aware of is Todd owns a business in Minnesota specializing in outdoor living areas. His creative vision for our Widgeon Terrace home includes adding window sliding doors that open up to our inside kitchen dining area, to a small existing deck where we were grilling outside, and that would expand our living area space. We have a smaller home than they do, so we look at land, and he's an expert in spatial areas. And to me, Todd's ability to visualize something like that, to make it so beautiful and complement our existing area we already utilize, is truly amazing. Moving on to 2022, we thought we'd move forward until Hurricane Ian directly hit Fort Myers Beach. It was devastating.
Honey, just take a breath.
In 2020, yeah, the hurricane was bad.
I know.
In 2023, we tried to move forward with our pool area plans with the town of Fort Myers Beach, but our land property survey had expired, so we had another delay, and we paid for another one to be completed. I think it's also important to share with you again what Sarah said, that the setbacks have changed twice since we started this process. Today, it's a 10-foot side yard setback. When we started this process, it was only 7.5 feet side yard setback. Sorry. With a team of experts and professionals, we have followed due process with every protocol and procedure required by the town of Fort Myers Beach since 2021. Last time we met with you on Tuesday, December 19th, you voted unanimously in a 7-0 vote in favor of us to move forward to the City Council. We met with the City Council on Monday, January 8th, and we are back in front of you today for a couple reasons. Number one, after our prior meeting with you, Todd did notice that the pool screen enclosure was not in our application, and we reached out to Sarah immediately. We thought, our mistake, a setback was a setback. This was our mistake. We thought a setback was a setback, whether it was for a pool or the pool with a screen enclosure. This was our mistake. As a result, we are requesting to add a screened enclosure to our application, making sure we cover everything that you require. Number two, Robert never showed up at the LPA meeting we had on Tuesday, December 19th. So we thought he had a change of heart over the years as our neighbor. To our surprise, he showed up to the city council meeting on Monday, January 8th with his rental property manager, Judy, both clearly upset and sharing numerous opinions and concerns. We were stunned and caught off guard by some of their comments and accusations. Number 3, the city council suggested we meet with Robert and Steph prior to our meeting, so we did. We met with Robert 3 times, with Steph joining us on the last visit, which took place last Saturday. We listened to their concerns. We answered all of their questions. We walked around our property, and we even walked up to their guest house and onto their bayside deck and their golf side deck in their living quarters above their 2-vehicle garage. Prior to our meeting and walkabout with Robert and Steph, Todd even placed story poles, those long poles, to show exactly where the pool would be located, showed them it would be even with our existing deck that we already have, and gave them clarification to issues that were unclear or confusing to them. Both the Helsteins and Todd and I openly shared what we both were willing to compromise and what we were both not willing to compromise. And at the very end, we even hugged and said, we love you as neighbors, and we're sorry that we both feel differently, but in the end, we really want a pool, and that's what brings us here today. So with that being said, I'd like to, for now, welcome you to our home until you can come over if you like. Todd and I and our children frequent our Fort Myers Beach home approximately every 2 to 3 weeks off season, and we winter here. From what we have experienced since 2021 is that Robert's handyman Jeff, Robert's contractors, and his renters frequent the house more than Robert and his family. Be clear on this, we do not rent our home. It is a home, not a rental house, and there is a difference. At this time, we are open to a discussion and or to answer any questions you might have at this time. With that said, you can tell that I have a lot of other papers in there. It's a 30-page packet. I can go through it, but I'd rather wait, see what the questions are, and then go back to it, so I am being respectful of your time and answering things specifically that you need. And I do have a cheat sheet, being a teacher, that I know what page to go to when you ask me a question. And I will do the best I can do, not being an official professional at something like this. So I thank you.
You did a very
for
good
listening
job,
to-
Kelly. Thank you. Okay, so let me start with you, Scott. Any questions?
Not yet.
How about you, Jim?
I'll defer now, too.
You're going to defer as well. Jane, questions? Patrick, questions?
No questions for now.
None right
Don?
now.
Doug?
Yeah, I have, make sure I understand this. I'm looking at one of the exhibits. Are we talking about reducing the 10-foot setback to 7.82 feet or to 7 point, from 10 to 7? So we're asking for 2 feet? Okay.
Jane?
I guess I just want to clarify, when they bought the house and when they started the plan, the setback was 7.5.
Was 7.5.
So the plan that they got when they purchased the home, that was a proposal done by the previous owner, was a 7.5 foot setback. And that's what they were basing their understanding of what they could possibly get there.
Yeah, so at that time, it was a 7.5-foot setback.
It was 7.5, and it changed over time, between
Twice.
2021 and today.
So
Twice, correct.
if that was still 7.5-foot setback, they would be okay right now?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
There's no, they also need a rear setback variance.
Mean high water.
Yeah.
And any other questions from this side over here? Dawn, Patrick?
None.
None. No one else? Okay, if we have other questions, we'll call you back up, okay?
I just want to clarify one thing, if I may.
Sure, Bob.
That's the end of your dock to the right.
Mhm.
I mean, that's
deck?
under your porch to the right? And will the dock, the pool deck that you're building or going to put the pool in, will it be the same level?
Yes.
And will it come out past that?
No.
And it's to the right of that, correct?
Yeah, even that palm tree you see there, the palm tree, it doesn't, I have pictures that show it doesn't even go past that palm tree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
The pool itself is only 10 feet wide if you were to go in the water, and I'm 5'7", so it's a small pool. I just
Okay.
want to
Thank
tell
you,
you how
Kelly.
small it is.
Okay. Is there public comment?
I have a bunch.
You have a bunch of them. Okay. Go ahead, Amy.
All right, first up is Sarah Spectre.
Good morning, Sarah.
May I approach?
And Sarah has also been qualified as a witness in previous cases. I like your glasses, Sarah.
Thank you.
How did this get so?
Last.
Sarah, this looks like more than a 3-minute presentation.
It does, and so I was going to ask, I represent the next door neighbors, the Helstein and Associates, the owners of 21381. I have the owners here with me, one of which was not going to speak, so I wanted to know if, I still won't go through all of this, I'm just more for pictures is why I provided it, but
Okay.
could I have additional time?
Does anybody object to that? Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, perfect. As mentioned, I'm Sarah Spectre. I'm an attorney with Retzel and Andrus, and I'm here on behalf of Helstein and Associates, the owners of the adjacent property. And as I mentioned, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I will go through very quickly. So as you know, the request today is for side and water body setbacks. And looking to slide 3, it is our contention that they do not meet 3 of the 5 criteria that is required to be met for a variance. First, it's not a de minimis request. It's not the minimum request that can be made. And it is detrimental to the neighborhood and public health, safety, and welfare. And for those reasons, we're asking that you deny the request today as it's presented to you. So I'm going to go through each one of those individually now. The first, as I mentioned, is that it is not a de minimis request. And I've included here the definition from the code of what de minimis means, and that it differs so little from an adopted regulation that the variance's effects on the public health, safety, and welfare would be inconsequential. And as you've seen here today, we still aren't sure what the request is for. Because when we originally viewed the application, it was for an at-level pool. I only found out that there was going to be a stem wall by pulling the permit file and looking at the permit file. I still haven't seen anything with the pool cage on it, so it's not clear. And we just happened across plans that showed where the kitchen was going to be. And the kitchen, from what we saw, is going to be immediately next to my client's property, not up next to their house, as Ms. Moore just mentioned to you. So I've included a picture of the property. This is slide 5, next to a survey. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because the property appraiser's lot lines are very off in this area. So I thought it would be easier to show you that the survey next to the aerial, to point out the mere fact that this is taking up, they already have taken up most of their property, and I'm not entirely sure, and I understand they're not required to at this stage, but I don't know how they fall under the 67%, or will meet the 67% when they add this additional raised pool and pool cage. The next slide, slide 6, will show you where the pool is proposed. And in other plans, we have seen that they will, here it's
pulled back from the three-story building, but we've heard that they were going to come up to the front of the three-story building and all the way back to where it's shown now. So almost from the front to the back of the house and very close to my client's property. To show you what it looks like, I have included pictures on slide 7 that show a straight-on view of the area in question. You'll see to the left is a truck. That's the shrubbery is about the property line. To the left of the shrubbery is my client's property, and you can see there that deck area there. I actually looked out of the deck area myself this weekend to better understand that there is a beautiful view from there. And the fact that they have another house is irrelevant to this discussion. They have a house here. They choose to live in the garage apartment and rent out for rental income the larger property. This is a fully sustaining house. There is a bathroom, kitchen, and bedroom, and that will soon be their permanent home this upcoming year. And so what I'm also showing you in the picture below on slide 7 is just the very small area where they're planning to put this pool in. And then finally, the one other point I wanted to make with regard to de minimis is there's only one other raised pool within the community, and it's immediately adjacent to Mr. Placid on the other side. And you can see what it looks like in the picture on slide 8, how it goes out much further, and this one does not even have a pool cage, and with the pool cage will block even more of the view. So it's our contention it's not a de minimis request. When they extend their pool to less than 7.5 feet from the property, or less than 10 feet, I should say, from the property line, on slide 9, it'll show you how their entertaining area will now be practically to my client's deck. So I wanted to give you a better idea of what that's going to look like when they put that in. Second, this is moving on to slide 10. This is not the minimum variance that could be requested. And though they've contended that they've spoken with my client, that first conversation didn't happen until Saturday before the conversation in 2021. The only conversation that was had was my client giving ideas for solutions and alternatives, and them giving excuses as to why that couldn't be done. So it was more of a personal preference than an actual need for them to put the pool there raised and with a pool cage. So alternative solutions that we've provided is either a pool on the south or east side of the home, an at-ground pool, which my client would be fine with because that will not block any views, and no pool cage or a shorter pool cage, definitely not one that goes up to the 3rd story, which they're proposing right now. And then finally, this will be injurious and detrimental to the neighborhood and public welfare. If you look to slide 11, the street narrows right here. You can look to 12 to see that there is a little mailbox area. That's where it goes from 20 feet to 15 feet. So not even the mailman will go past that to the smaller area because it's so narrow in that location. So our main concern with that is that the location and the size of the pool will take up the pool. Will take up the entire property and be have a potential for compromise to the drainage and shoreline, not only on their property but adjacent properties. But our main concern is safety and whether vehicles, especially those providing emergency services, would be able to come down there. This is the only place where they can turn around right now if they don't pull in and back up. So that's one of our main concerns, in addition to being very detrimental to my client's property and the view that they currently have. So with that, I will respectfully request that we would prefer that you deny this altogether, but at a minimum, that you consider alternatives that would not be injurious to my client and their view of the bay right there. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you. Amy, who's next?
Robert Himmelstein, sorry.
Amy, are you keeping the
I have
time?
some photographs for everybody also. I keep hearing over and over that the property,
But we can't hear you unless you're on microphone.
Yes, yeah. Don't, wait, hold all your comments until you get back to the microphone. Thank you.
I timed myself quite a few times this morning, and I can get it down to 3 minutes, but like around 4.5, I can go a little slower.
3 minutes. And if you would please, because you've already had extensive representation from your attorney, but if you could please say your name for the record.
My name is Robert Helstein.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. The first thing I was going to do is I was just going to hand out something else. They keep talking about that the size changed on the side yard setback, but I've got an email from Carl Benji back on August 11th of 21 telling me that it was 10 feet for a raised pool. Basically, we have one elevated pool in Flamingo Harbor, and it's in the front of the home, and there's no screen cage. If you look at that front photograph, you'll see that there's only one raised pool. And I was told that that pool was approved with a variance because the neighbor supported it. From day one, I told Todd I wasn't in favor of his pool. I thought it was going to happen, which they admitted to today, and I appreciate that. I did receive a landscape plan from him recently. Actually, I received it from Sarah, and the landscape plan had some problems with it in regards to the plantings and everything else, but he said he'd work on that with us. But importantly, this home, Todd's home, is the only home in our neighborhood that's directly on the road. He's proposing to extend another 12 feet longer with a screen cage to his roof. Todd's home is already the longest home on the roadway. Todd's home does not meet the impervious surface calculation. The impervious surface calculation says the dimension is 108.49 by 100 to equal 10,849. And that's totally incorrect since their property is not square, and the north side is only 90 feet wide, and this is giving them that length even though the boundaries are in the water. I Googled standard sized pools, and I saw that they come up to be 10 by 20. They want to build something that's 12.5 by 39 feet long. His proposed pool is a hot tub, waterfall, 2 fire bowls, an outdoor kitchen, and all this will be within the side yard setback. And I showed you from the email I received from Carl Benji that it was always 10 feet if it was a raised pool. So basically, they're asking for 21.8% of what's required for amenities that are right next to me. I'll be losing the quality of life, sunshine on my deck, and sunshine into my home, a cross breeze from my slider, and a view of my sunrise. If you look at that last picture, that's the actual picture of my view of my sunrise. And that's off my deck, and I see the sunrise every morning. My wife will admit I'm up every morning and I watch that sunrise. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. Todd told me he can't go back to the state because the state won't allow him to build it on the back of his house. I did get an email from the state that he can change it anywhere he wants. It obviously have to be a lot smaller. Everybody on Flamingo Harbor always says that Flamingo Harbor is the most beautiful neighborhood in Fort Myers Beach. And I agree, and I'm trying to keep it that way. I've been on Widgeon Terrace. My in-laws lived there first. I conceived my middle child there New Year's Eve of 2020. It's very, very important to me. When I tell you, I would like to have the city planner come see this. When you see what I'm talking about, it doesn't work. His property is the closest one on the roadway. The roadway goes from 25 feet wide down to 15 foot. Yes, my property is a beautiful property at the end, but I need an entrance to it. I can't lose the entrance. There have been 4 homeowners since 1979 for 21391 Widgeon Terrace, and I'm the 6th homeowner for 21381. It's important for Flamingo Harbor to be preserved for the future people that could live on that street. It is a most beautiful street. Thank you. I'm out of time.
Thank you so much.
Got the look.
And it is a beautiful street.
Thank you.
Yes. Amy?
Jeff Walker. After Mr. Walker will be Judy Hadia.
Hello, my name's Jeff Walker.
Good morning.
I manage Robert Himmelstein's his rental properties. Him having a significant presence here on Fort Myers Beach for a significant time not only manage that property, he has condos, he has the store with the nice bus on it now that we're in the process of trying to rebuild as well. But I can attest, I manage the rental property, so where they live is not the rental property. That's a separate house with a garage underneath it. It's a garage with the living above it. The rest of the property I maintain for renters solely because that's the reason he bought it. I mean, it helps fund the property because the expenses of it are significant. So he can still live, enjoy the views of that property and still maintain it because of the expenses of it. It's a very unique property. We invite you all to come by and look at it. But the houses 1, 2, and 3 are all rental pieces, 4 being his owner's quarters. He comes here more than once a month since I've been working for him, since the storm happened. So I've at least once a month, if not more than that, he's here, and he's in those quarters. His family has come up. He and his wife come up and are there at least once a month. So he is here. He's planning on making his permanent home, and he loves the outdoors, the views, and that's the reason that he's so adamant about this. I've sat on his deck many times, both of his decks up there, and we've eaten and we've talked and we've looked prior to this, and we realize what's going to happen once if it all goes through. It's going to impede his view considerably, and it's not going to give him the same feel of that house anymore. It wasn't meant to be his whole house. The whole place was never meant to be his home. It was that particular building was meant to be his home, and that's what we're looking for today, to keep his home the way it is, the way he can enjoy it, because you won't have the same enjoyment out of it, if this all goes through. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Judy Hadia, and after Ms. Hadia is Dorothy Himmelstein.
Thank you. My name is Judy Hadia. I live at 400 Bayland Road, and I do own Century 21 Tri-Power Realty and Tri-Power Vacation Rentals. I have a real concern about the setback. It seems as though the setbacks there are there for a purpose. And one of those main purposes would be to protect your neighbor from intrusion. So here we have a situation where the neighbor adjacent to this property objects to that setback. I would think that would weigh a whole lot in making a decision. I would think that if a neighbor objects to you encroaching or having a variance towards your property for especially a pool structure that's elevated would weigh a whole lot. And I would object to that. The other thing is, I think down at the end of Sterling Street on the bay, I believe there was somebody that wanted to put in an elevated pool, and there was quite a bit of controversy about that. And that pool was objected simply because it obstructed the view. And I know that, elevated pools have, there's been a lot of controversy, and there have been codes passed objecting to the elevated pools. And I would think that the obstruction of an elevated pool would be really, adversary to the neighbors. So, for those two reasons, really, I think, it should be turned down or changed or comply. I just can't see how somebody can have a variance that would encroach another person's view and another person's living and that be acceptable. They are there for a purpose. So, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy.
Now, I have 2 cards for Dorothy Himmelstein. Are there 2 Dorothys? Okay, Dorothy.
My dad's helmet, 94.
Got it.
My name is Larry Himmelstein. I've been a property owner at Bay Beach since 1977. I've known Robert for 60-some years. He's my son. I created a business in New Jersey, which Robert has followed, and he in turn is getting ready to retire, I think, and create a business in Fort Myers Beach. He will be the Surfside Casual Furniture operator at 2815 Estero Boulevard. And I know he's trying to get started on the building there. He has a lengthy permit application in and will be a permanent resident on this island when he gets the building built, which should be certainly within the next year. Nothing else to say. Any questions that anybody wants to ask me in relation to this?
No, sir, but thank you for your comments.
Right.
Anyone else, Amy? Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for public comment?
Dorothy.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Dorothy Himmelstein. I'm Robert's mom. And you just heard my husband speak, how long we've been coming down here. And we love Fort Myers Beach, and we're happy that Robert and his family love it also. And he comes down as often as he can. And in the future, he'll probably be here more often when he's busy trying to set up a business on Fort Myers Beach. And, you know, we hope that will come about soon. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment. Mr. Brandt, did you have any follow-up?
I have a picture. I'm going to just pass it down for you. Take a look at pass it from it. I got to fix this.
Bob, don't talk if you're not on the microphone. No wonder they asked what
We
your
don't
name
have
was.
name tags.
I want to thank these people that spoke. Unfortunately, what they said is not relevant. I'm sure Robert's a great guy. I'm sure he's a hard worker. He obviously did very well. But I want to address the de minimis part of it. What everybody here is forgetting, and maybe, because I wasn't aware of it until my neighbor built a new house next to my house. And they're currently making him tear out half of his driveway and putting in culverts that are 6 feet deep to contain the water. This pool cannot go anywhere in the ground. They're already exceeded their pervious drainage. And a pool doesn't count as being pervious. That's impervious ground. So they cannot put a pool in the ground. The town won't let them. And there's no way to get around that. You have to control your own water on your own property. So there's no way they can put an in-ground pool in. There's no way to put it on the other side of the building. Why would you put a pool next to your bedrooms on the other side of the building? This is as de minimis as it gets. It's a 10-foot pool, not a 20-foot pool. So A, there is no option to put an in-ground pool in. The town won't permit that, and we can't get a variance for that. The neighbor to the other side of my neighbor who built a new house has these huge culverts running through his whole sides and into his backyard so he can contain his own water. The town is getting very, very strict on that, especially after Ian. Don't know how that's going to help with a 13-foot tidal surge, but in any event, that's the requirement. I think you can check with town staff on that. So this is the least they could request. This is the de minimis as it gets under the law.
Okay.
You know, this is his garage. It's not blocking any view. What it's going to do is beside the house, which is already blocking the view. And to address the one lady's comment, we live in a neighborhood, a small neighborhood, and yes, there is give and take. if you may have to obstruct somebody's, every time somebody builds a new house, when I first built my house, it was 2 stories high, it was probably 40 feet up. My neighbors are building 60, 70 feet houses now. It's just the nature of the beast down here. These are not 10-acre lots. Anyway, it's as de minimis as it gets, and yes, there is a certain amount of give and take. And there was one other thing I wanted to address that was brought up. You know, he chooses to live above his garage and rent his house out for $57,471.
That's not relevant, Bob, and you know it. Okay.
Our neighbors don't complain about that. They haven't complained about all the traffic and the people out in
But we're
their
not
house.
talking about that. We're
Well, I
talking about the
understand that, but
variances.
It's the view we're talking about.
Correct.
It's not blocking anything, first of all. Second of all, even if it did, it has to be a little give and take here. So we would ask that you approve and pass this on to the city council and let them make the final decision. If you want to put in there the landscaping requirement, we're okay with that.
Okay.
And let them build their pool and enjoy their lives.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have
Thank
anything you want to add?
Don, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask one question on the, on Mr. Himmelstein's attorney's presentation. It said that.
We weren't privy to those pictures. They
Okay,
never
no,
gave
no, no,
us
I'm just
copies.
asking a question. One of their suggested alternatives was a 10-foot pool cage. Is that something that the applicant would consider, or what is the height of the pool cage now? Because I know the house had a 3-story pool cage before I bought it, but are you going 3 stories? I heard 3 stories from, I think, Mr. Himmelstein.
That'd be 2 stories above the pool.
Okay, so is that 10 feet? I'm trying to figure out what is the pool height.
Todd, would you speak
Okay.
to the microphone, please?
Yeah, no higher than the house.
Okay, so, but they had suggested a 10-foot pool cage, which would really just be like it'd be that level that the pool is on. And so is that an option, I guess, is what I'm asking. I realize it's not the most optional. Is it an option? I'm looking for a compromise.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to, 10 feet seems really short for the inside of a pool area, I guess. So I don't know if I can answer that without some sort of design aspect to it. But,
Okay.
But I think I mean, the whole bottom line is that by the time we're done with our landscaping plan and our screening, if you look at page 25 and 26 on the book there, this is exactly how people screen their pools to keep it out of the view of other people. So no matter if it's a 10-foot or a 20-foot high screen like he has, you'll see that, you know, everyone screens it with big trees so they're able to enjoy their properties. This is his house in particular. That's his 20-foot screen behind there. It's got beautiful screening. So no matter if it's a 10-foot or a 15-foot or whatever, when we're all done, we're going to hide that for him so that he's not, you know, and be able to block any type of, you know, give a buffer for noise and that type of thing. So
Okay.
Thank you.
believe
Thank
me,
you.
we'll do a very good job.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much, folks.
I guess one more thing, I'm sorry, but there was a lot of mention on lot coverage, that you need 67%. We had Land Tech out yesterday just to double check our figures because we did them on our own, and it came out to 63.24%. So we're fine on that end, and that's kind of between us and the city anyway. The view, we sat up on his deck, we put the story poles up, and I think we all agreed that he is not missing any view at all from there. And they should attest to that because, and again, the 7.5-foot setback, we're not asking for anything new. It kind of changed, and we already did the environmental survey, everything. We kind of started this process, so that's the reason why we're doing that. But more importantly, we'll screen it. It'll look awesome.
Thank you
So,
very much.
yep.
Thank you. Kelly, you had something else?
I do, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. I just wanted to note that their main house is 60 feet away from ours. The garage is closer. That's their living quarters or their guest house or what they refer to on their rental website as their storage area. Steph said that she wants to be in a bigger house, and I looked at her and I said, I hope that you can be in that bigger house. I want that for her. That was important to her. I don't think I need to say anything else except for just that pictures speak volume. This is what it looks like with the coverage from different people. And at the last city council meeting on live streaming, Robert told us that one of the things on our application that was wrong is that he didn't have his garbage cans out. Being a school teacher, I wanted to show you that he does. And I want to let you know, we don't mind. But I just don't like someone calling us a liar. And that bothered me, and I for my 2 cents, I needed to let everyone out there know that we didn't lie. This is what we see.
So Kelly, I'm going to wrap this up
Okay, go
because
ahead.
we really have two technical variances
got
to
it.
approve.
Sorry.
Or not approve. And it pains me enormously when it's been a long time since I have had or listened to neighbors, opposing each other. It pains me enormously.
Me too.
But it seems that that's going to be the case here until it's resolved, and I can't fix that. So if there's anything else relevant to the variances, is there anything else? No?
No, and I want to say out loud too, we will be okay. We love them, and we're sorry
great.
we're in this, but I want to make sure that you know that in the end, we will get along. It's just terrible that two neighbors have to do this, and I wouldn't wish this upon anyone either.
Okay, thank you very much.
So
Nancy, are you going to say something?
I am. As you close the public hearing component of this particular item, I just wanted to remind the LPA that any subsequent motion can either be a motion to approve, a motion to deny, and should it be a motion to deny, which criteria has not been satisfied should be stated, and the last option would be a motion to continue.
A last motion to continue.
To continue,
Yeah.
if there is still questions that the LPA has that could be resolved to a subsequent meeting.
Okay. First, I'm going to ask, are there any additional questions for staff? Doug?
No.
Don?
No.
Patrick?
Yes.
Sarah,
My-
have you got a microphone?
So my question to staff is, elevated pool that is structural, wouldn't that count as impervious?
It will, and they did state that.
They stated that if they put a pool on the ground, it will be calculated impervious, therefore they can't do it.
Oh.
But if they put an elevated pool, that's
also
impervious, so they couldn't do that either. I'm trying to figure out what the facts are here.
They will be required to meet the impervious surface coverage. We have not done that calculation. They have indicated to us that they can meet it. So we haven't evaluated that yet. If they are providing an impervious surface, it counts as an impervious surface.
So just to clarify, an elevated pool with a pool deck, all that area would be considered impervious.
Unless they're showing us some way that that's not impervious.
Correct.
For instance, if they have a deck that allows water to percolate through, if they, there are systems they can put in place. I'm not aware of what they're doing on that yet. I did want to state there was some back and forth regarding the dates of the
Setback
changes
changes.
for the setbacks. So I just wanted to clarify, the 15% of the lot width came into effect February 22. Prior to that, the setbacks were 7.5 feet for principal structures, which an elevated pool would count as. So it was 7.5 feet up until February of 2022. The 10-foot code came into place in June of 23.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. Any other questions for staff? Jim?
Yes. Generally, the town doesn't regulate landscaping, correct?
On residential properties, generally not. We have had instances where conditions have been placed on residential properties in the cases of variances.
But for the petition, the owners of the property could put barrier-type tall landscaping without any input from the community, or from the town, which would have which could affect the view from the garage deck as well.
Yes.
And we have seen no elevations about what the cage would look like, and you have not done the calculation for impervious surface.
I have not. That doesn't mean that there isn't an application in. I tend to not do those reviews, so that might be something other staff have looked at. Hold on one second. Okay. No, because we haven't done the review. So the two of us here, aren't aware of that, but that is something that they would be required to meet. So it's not something that they can just say, well, we got an approved variance, so we can do it. They would still have to meet that requirement.
But we don't have that information
Uh,
today.
Both of us
Yes.
don't
Right.
have it, but it may be in.
Other questions for staff?
Yeah,
Don?
just with that, they have to get a permit no matter what. So we're here to talk about the variances for the setbacks. Once, if that were approved, the next stage is permitting, which includes drainage, which includes all of the structural requirements for whatever this thing looks like.
Yes.
Cage included,
Yes,
correct?
that,
Okay.
that is correct.
Yep, thank you.
So I've got a question. I think it's directed to Mr. Himmelstein, but also it could be something that's under review. So when I met with him yesterday, I was shown a plan of the pool and the pool deck, including an outdoor kitchen. Again, I don't know if that was submitted to staff, probably not.
It's in the package, I believe, isn't it?
It's not in any of this
Wasn't
stuff.
it in there?
It's an actual plan that shows the pool and an outdoor kitchen
Mr.
associated with it.
Himmelstein? Thank you.
So again, to me, that's material. If it's been submitted and there are plans, it's material, and we are told that they're asking for a de minimis variance, including for a pool, not for an outdoor kitchen. So again, that plays into my thought process. And my frustration, folks, is not towards the applicant, but some of the things that have been said and the application to me is a mischaracterization of facts. And that is what I'm not happy with today. The one big issue that I think we need to look at is there's going to be a wall, a structure going towards the water. And if you look at what Ms. Spectre provided on page 8, okay, the neighbor next to the applicant has an elevated pool, and what you can see in that picture right here is what it's going to look like. It's going to be a wall, okay?
Yeah.
And we've had that discussion as a town for many other cases, and it became very controversial. So to me, are we okay with this or not? That's what's at issue, okay? The idea of pervious, impervious, they're going to have to go through a permit. That's going to be regulated. The emergency access, again, it's not their responsibility to allow an emergency vehicle to turn around on their property. So none of that stuff is relevant to me. What's relevant to me is, yes, it's a, let's not forget, it's a side setback variance and a rear variance. The rear variance, what essentially does is it'll bring that building, that structure, that wall, closer to the water. And it does obstruct someone's view shed. Again, is that acceptable or not? That's what I want us to have a discussion about. But my frustration is clearly about the characterization of what is being requested. And also, you know, it was mentioned the garbage, and I went back and I read the application. The characterization was the only thing they have next door is storage and garbage. It's more than that, folks. They have storage and garbage at the ground level. They have an apartment up top. So again, my frustration is let's not mischaracterize that. Let's address the issue. Let's know what the facts are, and we can decide if it makes sense or not.
Just
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment on that. As they advertise the property, they advertise it as storage. And that is stated in black and white. And if they didn't put in a pool and put in landscaping that went up, 15 feet in the air, they have a right to privacy on their property, and the owner next door does not have a right to the view through their property. But the cement block will be at the same level as the deck, and the pool itself doesn't have any height or structure. It could be seen through if they don't landscape that high. So I'm not sure that view is the issue. It's not going to be forward of the property, and the angle of the building, and like I said, they have 60 feet in between the two buildings. It seems to me to be a de minimis request.
My question to you, Jane, have you seen this picture here?
Yes,
Okay, so you have to imagine the same thing will happen over here,
right.
all the way here.
I understand.
So if I could just add to that, you said you wanted to have a discussion about it, so I'll make the point on that one, right, on that picture right there. I lived there for 5 years. So the house on the other side, it actually does come out past the 21,391 structure.
Certainly.
You don't see it because it's not higher than your eye level. If you were laying down on the deck, you wouldn't see it. All you see I could see right through there. So that was my office. On this end, I saw right over that pool. So it's hard for me to, and then on this end, it's a hedge. I mean, there's a hedge there that is as high as that wall will be, and the wall will be within the structure of the house. So, and again, I'm super familiar with this property. I laid out this pool. I looked for all the ways to do it. And so I struggle because Robert Helstein and I are friends. We've ridden bikes. We do push-ups on the beach. And I know he doesn't want it. I don't quite understand it because if I go sit on his deck, and I have, I'd love to see the fire bowls because the house is ugly to me. The 21,391 vinyl sided house is ugly. And so, but I get it. That's where he stays when he's in town, in that one bedroom, apartment. And it is a fully functional apartment there. So I don't want to get in the way of that, but I'm struggling because I don't see where this, other than the cage, will in any way, shape, or form impede any view except that deck that looks over the street and the front, which is the picture that Mr. Himmelstein's attorney showed us. Other than that deck, but if you go to, you'll look over the pool there, but you still have the view. But if you go to the deck I would sit on if I were there, it's just like me. I didn't sit on the side of that house. But if you go on the deck forward, you are looking out at the bay and sunrise. And so, again, I struggle because Robert is my friend. I understand. I understand. I lived in that house. I dealt with no rentals on each side. When I moved in, suddenly there were rentals on each side. It's just something you deal with. It's a weekly rental street. I didn't like it. There wasn't anything I could do about it.
So you moved?
I'm sorry?
So you moved?
Well, I thought I was moving to Arizona, but anyway, it doesn't matter. When I see their picture of that house, I want the house back. I love the house. I loved it there. Yeah, but we absolutely had a pool plan, and our intention was similar to the applicant, and that is, don't block anyone's view, even though that apartment wasn't used at all then, it wasn't the Himmelsteins. So, but I do struggle because this here, you wouldn't see the pool, you'd see water, maybe fire bowls. Yeah.
So
You'd see the pool cage for sure, and that would be the thing from this deck. From the other deck, you wouldn't see anything. So, and again, sorry, that was just my...
Don, does it one thing that bothers me is that we're only talking about your garage apartment, not your entire piece of property. So the entire, the entire piece of property has spectacular views.
All the way around, yeah.
All
it's
the way
beautiful.
around. So we're only talking about a tiny portion of that property. I'm going to tell you, I'm in absolute favor of the variance. I'm in favor of the variance. Do I like the idea of elevated pools? No. And I actually ran for the council in 2014 because of elevated pools. I don't like them. However, in this particular neighborhood, it doesn't impact anyone. You know where I don't like them? I don't like them on Estero Boulevard, right next to Junkanoo's, where you look at them all the time. But does it impact anybody in this neighborhood? No. I think that the request is reasonable. I really, Patrick, I know what you're saying about you feel like it wasn't totally laid out properly.
My frustration is I believe it was mischaracterized. That's my frustration.
I don't share that feeling.
I'm open to
I don't
having that
either.
discussion
Yep.
about does it make sense or not.
Yeah, I don't feel like it was mischaracterized, and I believe that it's a variance that we should approve, both of them, quite honestly.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion, just to move things along. So I'm going to make a motion to approve variance 202-30162, the two variances from LDC Table 34-3 to decrease the side setback, the side yard setback, and decrease the water body setback, finding it consistent with the regulations of the LDC, and that's it.
I'll second that. Do you want
And
to
the
add the
comp plan.
conditions of the landscaping?
Yes, I do wish to add the conditions of the landscaping as prepared.
I'll second it with the change.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion. I'll call for a roll call vote. My vote is yes. Jane?
Aye.
Doug?
Nay, I'll just say I tend to agree with Patrick
Okay.
on pretty much everything he said.
Don?
Aye.
Patrick?
Nay, just like the condition that I was open to making, putting other conditions or allowing a ground level pool, but nay for the proposed.
Okay. Jim?
I live next door to an elevated pool, and with the arekas that have been planted, they're taller than the wall of the pool, and they're taller than the cage, and it provides adequate screening for me, so I'm a yes.
And Scott?
Yes.
The motion passes. Your variances are, I am so thrilled about your business that's going to open. I'm sorry that this is creating this rift in your neighborhood. I find it really, really sad and difficult, and I'm sorry for you, Don, that you had to deal with that. So, okay, thank you all very much for being here. We'll move on to the next case, which is Resolution 2409, Variance 202-30288, 8069 Estero Boulevard. This is a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving with conditions or denying variance 202-30288, requesting a variance from LDC 34638D1G, which requires new at-grade mechanical equipment to not encroach into a side yard setback and to be located on the side of the property with the larger setback, where there are differing side setback widths for the property located at 8069 Estero Boulevard, providing for clarifications as necessary, providing for conflicts of law, Scribner's errors, severability, and providing for an effective date. Are there any LPA members that have ex parte communications? Scott?
None.
How about you, Jim?
None.
Jane?
None.
Patrick?
None.
Don?
None.
And Doug?
No, ma'am.
I don't either. Thank you very much. Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. Blair Harris, owner of 8069 Estero Boulevard, is requesting a variance from LDC Section 34638D1G to allow new at-grade pool equipment to encroach into a required side yard setback 2.5 feet. The code requires that at-grade pool equipment or mechanical equipment, all mechanical equipment, meet required side yard setbacks, and also requires that new equipment be placed in the larger side of the house if it is not centered on the property. The property contains a single-family residence with an 8.8-foot side yard setback on the west side and a 31-foot side yard setback on the east side. 8069 Estero is an RS zoned property that is 125 feet deep and between 66 and 74 feet wide. A new pool was built on the property in 2022 and new equipment was installed on the west side of the property. The approved plan shows the equipment on the east side of the house where the larger setback is. The pool failed final inspection based on the incorrect location of the equipment. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow the pool equipment to remain within the required side yard setback, 5.05 feet from the east side property line, where a setback of 7.5 feet is required. Staff is available to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is also here, I believe.
Are there questions for staff? Jane?
Sarah, didn't we have a situation exactly like this at the north end? I believe it was Mantanzas Court, but it might have been another street where they put it on the side that did not have the stairway because the fire department would not allow it to be on underneath the stairs, because if that caught on fire, burnt the stairs, they'd have no access down.
I was not part of that case, so I'm not sure. That may have been. That was not the reason this equipment was put there. The equipment was, it appears, just put there by the pool company without complying with the plans.
But if that is the case, is there a place for it on the other side, other than being underneath the stairway?
Well, that would be a good thing to check. I don't know. What I know is that it's not in the correct place, so they're asking to keep it there.
Right.
I mean, we would have to investigate if the fire department had a problem with that. The fire department typically does not get involved in any residential review. So.
Well, but does that somewhat make sense?
What do you mean?
If the air conditioner somehow would catch on fire, if the air conditioner would somehow catch on fire, and the stairs are above it, and that takes away their egress and ingress, isn't that a safety hazard?
I know what you're saying, and I do recall the other case, but in this case, let's not speculate because we don't know. We're talking about a very different case where they've got 27 feet on the other side, so they don't have to put it under the stairs because they've got 27 feet. So I don't want to speculate as to why. We can ask the applicant why their pool guy messed up, and we'll find out.
And Doug?
Yeah, I would have the same question. I think we deserve an explanation from somebody else. Was there a reason it was put there when the plans submitted in the permit showed it someplace else? And probably didn't show it under the wood steps, but showed it someplace.
It did, the plans they submitted did show it under the wood steps
it did. Okay,
in the
I'm
larger side setback. So
And I
they
do
showed
remember
it, they showed it in the correct place, and then they put it in the incorrect place. And
Well,
then
this is
we
mo-
failed
this is
the
a
inspection.
Is there any
Full-time
reason it
issue.
can't be moved back where it's supposed to
Can't
be?
believe this keeps happening.
I swore this exact case was like last meeting.
It
or
was.
two- Okay.
Same
Okay.
situation.
So,
Yeah.
so the difference with 11 Palm View, so you're thinking of 11 Palm View on that
yes.
one.
Yeah.
So the difference with that was that one plan was submitted to staff that we approved, then another set of plans was submitted, and zoning didn't have to review that one because they'd already approved the plans, but they moved the equipment on the second set of plans. So the problem was different plan sets showing the equipment in different locations. Whereas this one, the plan set, all the approved documents showed the pool equipment in one location, and then upon final inspection, it was in a different location.
So wouldn't the pool contractor know about setbacks and know he couldn't put it there?
Well, they should have put it wherever the approved plans
Yeah,
indicated.
so it seems like we need some kind of explanation.
Just
If
so
we're going to approve this, we're going to have to, I feel like I need an explanation.
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Okay. So hopefully we'll get that answer.
Yeah.
And just so I'm clear, this the survey here shows an AC pad, so the AC's on the side where the pool equipment was installed in error.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And then there's a little shed there, it looks like as well.
Yep.
Is that attached to the structure, do we know?
It's
No,
not.
okay.
No. And I believe that they requested an administrative variance to allow the pool, the shed to remain there because they had evidence that the shed had existed prior to the storm. So I believe that they've gotten an administrative variance approved for that. However, the pool equipment, because it violates the zoning requirements for setbacks, they had to get a full variance.
I have one more question.
Go ahead, Don.
Does the pool equipment, it looks like the pad does not extend past where the AC does. It definitely doesn't the shed, but it doesn't extend past the AC, right? Is it?
It's very close to being in line with it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other
You-
questions? Go ahead, Jim.
Do you know if on that side of the house where the AC pad is and the pool equipment, if that's where the electrical service comes into the house?
I could not speak to that.
Maybe
Does the
maybe the
neighbor-
applicant will have these answers. Okay.
Is there any
other-
objections from the neighbor?
I have not received any objections or letters of support.
And I believe what I read in the packet is that the neighbors support.
Okay,
Yes.
and I haven't seen anything.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
We'll ask the applicant to come up. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Valerie Harris. I'm Blair's wife. I live at 8069 Estero Boulevard. We moved there in 2021, similar to the last people, and wanted a pool. So in 2022, we put a pool in, and it was installed and paid for in July of 2022. The inspection, for whatever reason, didn't happen before Ian, and we were not aware that the equipment was put in the wrong place at that point. Ian came, and we were destroyed just like everybody else. The pool equipment was destroyed, the cage was destroyed, the pool was fairly damaged, and our lower level was completely wiped out. We spent 10 months rebuilding.
Take a breath.
We spent-
You know, it's amazing. Everybody who says, and then the hurricane came, it's like, whew, you feel it all over again.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we spent 10 months rebuilding. We were able to rebuild the pool cage, fix the pool equipment, and rebuild our lower level after 10 months, and we moved back in. And we had all the inspections done. And then we were informed that the pool equipment was put in the wrong place. So we went back to the contractor and said, hey, the pool equipment's in the wrong place. And he told us, I can move it to under the stairs, but you're going to have to pay, which we've already paid. So we have no leverage whatsoever with this guy besides suing. We would have to dig up the driveway that we re-put in, the patio that we re-put in, and the pool. So after all this hard work, we're going to be asked to go back and dig everything back up again. It's big. It's not a small job to move it to the other side, and it is under the stairs. Our neighbor, I have this, I thought I provided it. Basically, our neighbor with a sign that I can give you, sorry, I don't have copies
That's
for all
okay.
of you. It says, we own the property at 8057 Estero, which is the side with the equipment next to Valerie and Blair Harris. We would like to let you know that we have no objections to the pool equipment on Valerie and Blair's property that does not meet the setbacks rules. Respectfully, Jonathan McHugh and Elaine Eagle.
Thank you very much. You can hold on to it for a second till you're finished.
So they don't object. We really have no recourse other than to pay to redo that. We're back in our home. We're living there peacefully and quietly, and I think our neighbors are happy. So I would really beseech you to approve this for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Doug, did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Valerie?
I saw you shake your head. That is the side of the house that the electric service comes in?
Yes, this is 8057 is that side, the west side.
Scott, any questions?
No, ma'am.
Patrick?
No, would you like to entertain a motion?
I'd love one.
I'll make a motion to approve the requested variance.
Madam Chair, public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. You see, I got swept up in Patrick's enthusiasm. Valerie, thank you very much. Is there any public comment? on this case?
Oh, can I have that document for the record, please?
No public comment? We'll close the public comment. Any further questions for staff or the applicant? Hearing none. Patrick?
I will make a motion to approve the requested variance.
I'll second.
There's a motion and there's a second. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Sarah, are you looking like you wanted to say something? No? Okay. No further discussion. Patrick, your vote?
Yay.
Who was the seconder?
Doug.
Don?
No, Doug.
Doug?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Jim?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Anita? Yes. Congratulations, Valerie. We're glad you're back in your home. You're welcome. The next item, does anybody want to take a break?
Maybe a quick restroom
Yep,
break?
okay.
5-minute break?
Yep, 5-minute break. Jacob, we're on break. back to order. And Jane wanted to say something?
I did find out who the pool company was. It's Diamond Pools on that made the error of putting it on the wrong side of the pool, house. And I also checked back to 11 Palm View, which was the other case we had last month, and that was Tropical Pools. So we need to keep an eye on these boys.
Okay, Jane. Next item is Resolution 2420, VAR 202-30284. This is for 65 Flamingo Street. It is a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving with conditions, or denying variance 202-30284. Requesting a variance from Table 34-3, principal structure setbacks, to decrease the front street setback by 10 feet and decrease the rear setback by 15 feet and decrease the rear street setback by 15 feet to allow a new single-family home for the property at 65 Flamingo Street, providing for clarifications as necessary, providing for conflicts of law, Scribner's error, severability, and providing for an effective date. Is there anyone who has ex parte communications? Scott?
None.
How about you, Jim?
None.
I have none. Jane?
None.
Patrick?
I had a quick question with Jim right before we started the meeting today.
Okay. Don?
None.
And Doug?
None.
Okay. Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. I do want to make a quick correction that I found in the staff report last night. So also in the resolution title that you read, it is a request to reduce the front setback by 5 feet, and then there's an additional encroachment of a 5-foot single-story porch on the front of the house. So the encroachment is a full 10 feet, but the house is actually only encroaching 5 feet.
Okay.
Jim Inc., on behalf of owner Carl Pilat of 65 Flamingo Street, is requesting a variance from Table 34-3 of the Land Development Code for a reduction in the front setback of 5 feet and a reduction in the rear and rear street setback of 15 feet. This variance would result in a 20-foot front setback with a 5-foot encroaching first floor porch and a 5-foot rear and rear street setback. The property is a 50-foot deep by 72.5-foot wide, 3,500 square foot lot that fronts on Flamingo Street and abuts the Gulf Road cul-de-sac at the western rear corner of the property. The property is zoned RC. The minimum lot size for a new RC zoned lot is 4,000 square feet. However, the lot meets minimum length and width for the RC zoning district. This difference is likely due to the cul-de-sac cutout at the rear of the property. Prior to Hurricane Ian, the property contained a house that had a reduced setback. There were no former variances found for this property and no survey of the previous house to determine the setbacks. The applicant is proposing a 2-story house over flood with a 5-foot deep front porch on the first living level. 2 letters of objection have been received by neighbors within 500 feet of the property. Staff is here and the applicant is also available.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there questions for Sarah? Scott? Any questions? How about you, Jim?
No question.
Jane?
So this property, if they weren't putting a second story on it, would have the right to do exactly what they're asking?
They would be able to do the, use the cottage code. We would have to know the square footage of the previous house. So if it were the same square footage footprint and it was a single story, yes, they would be able to do that.
Right, okay, thank you.
Patrick?
A quick question, just to clarify the request. So the applicant's request, when it comes to that cul-de-sac, the rear street setback, they're calling for a variance from a 25-foot setback. And you're calling it a 20-foot setback. Can you explain that?
Yes. From our look at the codes, it's actually a 20-foot rear street setback, not 25.
Okay, and what would apply? Because like Jim, I was thinking it's a street setback, so it's 25 feet.
I think that when we were looking at it, we looked at it as 2 frontages. It's not truly a corner lot, but it is 2 street frontages, so we were looking at it from that direction. If you thought that it was more appropriate to call it that, to call it a 25-foot, we just thought that the 20-foot applied more properly, and we couldn't find good clarification in the code for a reason that it wouldn't apply.
Okay.
So that was where we came from on
And
that.
I guess I was just asking for clarification, should someone else look at it a few years down the road and say, we granted this kind of setback, but it was from 20 feet, not 25. As long as we make it clear, the assumption is the requirement is 20, and we're granting from that 20, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Don, any questions?
Mine was Patrick, so thanks, Patrick.
Okay. How about you, Doug? Questions?
No, ma'am.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Mr. Ink? Nancy? Jim informed me when we were walking in that he has never been accepted as an expert.
I have spoken strictly on legislative items as a resident in the 400 block, so I need to go through the question and
If you
answer.
would like to be viewed as an expert based on additional information that you have, based on your experience and your education, if you could, please state your education and experience background on the record, and then the LPA can take a vote to accept you as an expert witness in a particular area for the purposes of this meeting and subsequent meetings that you may participate in.
Yes, I'll cover the whole gambit today.
Excellent.
I wish to be tendered as an expert in comprehensive plan, land development code, civil engineering, which includes stormwater and utilities. My background is I am a resident of Lee County, have been all my life. We have property on the north end of the island that we built a house in '62, spent all summer out here, so I'm very familiar with the island. My father before me started an engineering company in the 50s, and it did considerable amount of work here, so I grew up in the firm. I went to college, University of Florida, got a Bachelor of Civil Engineering. I have been doing zoning, land use, and civil engineering as a professional engineer since the 80s. I have testified and deemed an expert. I was counting it up on the way out here, over a dozen jurisdictions on a local level, not counting just state. I have done comp plan amendments. I have done zoning, variances, board of adjustments, code enforcement, and developments of regional impacts in the Florida area.
Well, I think that's great, Jim. So,
Didn't you leave out that you were on the LPA for the town?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on the City of Fort Myers Planning Board for 13 years, recently retired, and the county LPA for 7 years, of which I was chairman the last 4 years.
I'd like to make a motion to accept Mr. Ink's qualifications as an expert in his field of planning and zoning and engineering et al.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Go Gators.
Any objection to the motion? Okay, Jim. You're
Okay, thank
officially
you.
an expert.
Thank you. And what we're here today and what my vast experience says, Sarah did such a good job. I should just say I'm here for questions and sit down. But we'll run through a couple little things. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and if I may pass out, I have copies of the PowerPoint for the board.
Okay. Albert, are you here for this case as well? You've been accepted as an expert before, haven't you?
I'm not sure if I have, actually. I don't know if formally.
Well, it'll
or-
give you an opportunity to expound on your marvelousness here shortly as well.
University Florida Gators team here. So I'm a Fort Myers, Lee County resident since my parents decided to move from Long Island to Cape Coral when I was 12. Went here locally, Community College of Edison at that time, and went to University of Florida, got my undergrad in Bachelor of Design and my graduate degree in Masters of Architecture. When I came back here, worked for various
Did you say
firms.
you got your undergraduate in fashion design?
No, Bachelor of Design.
I was going to say fashion.
No, no.
Well, how
I
cool
leave
is
that. I leave that to my wife to decide that part. I've been in business this is our 20th year. We've worked on over 1,500 projects around Southwest Florida and around the state, residential and commercial. We've done a lot of projects here in Fort Myers Beach as well since my career started here. Sadly to say, some of them have been lost over the years since, of course, the hurricanes have passed too. I've been working on construction documents, schematic design, from residential to commercial for the past 20 years. But I've been in the field since I've been 18, so I've been doing this for a long time.
Excellent. May I have a motion, please, to accept?
I'll motion to accept
I'll second.
Albert.
yes, as a professional.
Okay, so we have a
Expert.
motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there any objection to the motion? Motion carried.
I objected.
Okay, go ahead, Jim, keep going.
Just right from the start for clarification that Patrick did ask me the question about the 25-foot, 20-foot
Yes.
setback on Gulf Drive. And my interpretation was in 630 whatever, where it talks about corner lots in the Land Development Code, it keeps referencing side. So I just, out of caution, since it doesn't reference it, I reference it as a 25-foot setback. So we're here today to talk about this variance, 2023-0284 at Flamingo. You said back there. There we go. Well, okay. Cast of characters is me at Ink Engineering that we talked about, and Albert at Studio AD. The request statement, this is right out of what was read into the record, so we'll just skip over that and go to the next thing. This is a picture pre-Ian. And in the upper right, you can see the highlight of the property, and in the lower left, you can see that there was a single-family home there. And, you know, which the board probably knows, the aerials and the GIS system at Lee County, the aerials and the property lines don't always line up correctly. But in reference, it shows that there was a house. It was at the back of the property where it had small setbacks. Unfortunately, working with the owner, we can find no survey record or anything that really shows how big the house was or where the house was. Our illustrious property appraiser, Matt Caldwell, has decided when he updated the records, he took all the building data off the tax rolls.
Ooh.
So you can't just go to LEPA and click on the appraisal because there's no house.
Oh.
And in the new rolls, they took it out.
Well, that's
But in the old areas, it
I don't
had, you know, a 23 by 26,
Yeah.
which that's not the house. It's bigger than that. There you go. Yeah, it's he does have Albert's genius at this stuff. 26 feet wide by 40, 50 and change, 58 foot long house. So it's about 1,500 square feet of that area. Post-Ian, as we know, there is, the house was completely destroyed. Next, please. This is the survey of the property that shows that the property is essentially 72 feet wide. It's 50 feet deep. It has that little cutout from Gulf Road, but it fronts on Flamingo. And then we cleaned it up to show here is where we started. This is the property where we started for doing our design. So we went through at this point and we laid in the current setbacks, and the highlighted area is what you can build under the current code. That's roughly 6 feet wide and 250 square feet. That's counting the 25-foot setbacks and the side setbacks. So we decided, obviously you can't build a house there. So we're looking for a reasonable sized house to replace the footprint of what was there. And this is what the application request shows. It shows the standard 7.5-foot setbacks. It shows a 20-foot principal front setback, and it shows a 5-foot rear setback, which just from our interpretation, we believe replicates what was there. The reason for the 20-foot setback is that allows in the driveway to park most cars and not have them in the right-of-way. Big pickup trucks obviously might be a little bit different, but the idea, and it's what we do in planning all the time, these 20-foot setbacks is kind of the minimum that you have when you park cars in the driveway in the front so they're not hanging out into the right-of-way. In the variance, we have the 5 requests. Is this extraordinary conditions? Yes. I mean, we showed that was 250 square feet of buildable area is pretty extraordinary. Is it not of the actions of the applicant? Yes, we showed that Hurricane Ian destroyed the existing structure with there. Is it the minimum? We believe it's the minimum. The footprint that we showed you was right around the 1,600 square foot footprint, which was the existing place. Will it cause an undue burden? No, we don't think so, because that's kind of, as best we can replicate it, was what was on the property. The granting of the variance is not injurious to the neighborhood. Again, it's expected of what was done, and the circumstances are of general nature and current nature. All your cottage lots are a little different. The town has done a pretty good job of changing the land development code to make how to address these things without going through a variance, but we still feel that we do. So with that, open to questions, and what I would like to do, if it's not already, is our graphic that shows the buildable area be attached to the final ordinance, so it's just straight and it's clarified and it's easy moving forward when it gets to the building department and other places of exactly what we hope you grant. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Inc? Anyone? Albert,
Are you actually
I'm
putting in a spiral stairway?
I'm sorry not to
curious.
see a rendering of what the house will look like, because I loved looking at all the houses you're building, like on Hibiscus and whatnot. I've really enjoyed looking at
Yeah,
them.
when I looked at all the other variance applications, some did not.
Yep.
I didn't want to solidify an actual design just yet. The owner has been out of the country for a significant amount of time. We were going to, me, not Jim, go take care of a rendering this weekend just to show you something. But unfortunately, my daughter was hospitalized over the weekend, so time went to that. She's
Well, I hope
fine.
she's- oh, good,
But yeah,
good.
all the excess time went to that rather
Good.
than do
Well,
a nice little
God
concept
bless her.
view. But the plans that represent basically a starting point what we want within the setbacks that hopefully we're granted with will obviously keep within all those criteria, and the height restrictions, we're not asking for any additional height than what's allowed.
And so now here we have another elevated pool.
Yeah.
But it's a principal structure.
Yes, I know, it's just the issue of elevated pools. Patrick is right, we're going to see it. Oh, I hate saying that. I just hate saying Patrick is right.
Nobody wants salt water in their pool.
That's true, nobody wants salt water
Right.
in their pool. But it is, it's going to
And-
come up over and over.
And, what's different with this one also, we're not looking at bay or golf views.
True.
So,
True.
inland lot.
You got
Yeah.
gold.
Okay, no further questions for you guys. Thank you very much for your presentation. Any further questions for staff? Gentlemen? Lady? No questions for staff?
I have an email.
You have an email. Go ahead, Amy. Is the email objecting?
Yes.
Okay. What was it?
It was received from James Otteson. Oh, he's
Oh,
here.
he's here. Okay, well, I was just getting ready to open public comment.
And has he been sworn in?
Have you been sworn in?
It's John Otteson. I was sworn in.
You were.
I got here right in the nick of time.
In the nick of time.
In the nick of time. You all deserve medals for what you do. So I did send a letter of objection that my wife and I put together, and it was essentially, and I think you have it. Let me look for it. Essentially says, so we live at 6021 Gulf Road. We built our house about 5 years ago. And then we own homes on the north side and the south side. So we hit the jackpot because we lost both homes in the hurricane. And so we've been working to rebuild those two, and as of last week, we just got our permits. So we had to jump through all kinds of hoops. We had kind of a restrictive lots. So we had to work within that scope. And we did it. We didn't ask for a variance, and we're complying. I think ultimately we're going to have a good look. It's going to be a better look because we are complying. The home that was here, and I remembered because I walk by it almost every day. If you know Gulf Road runs north and south. Flamingo runs east and west, so they're perpendicular, but they're not joined. There's about, 50 feet, 70 feet, whatever, a trail or a path that leads to back and forth. And the subject property is right on that path. So I'd look at it as probably somewhat intrusive. I guess I'd like to know what's the square footage of the proposed home?
John, the proposed square footage, we can tell you that, but
okay.
you're not supposed to ask questions.
Sure. How much?
I'll let you know once you're finished talking.
Okay, fine. So I think that's really it. In the last comment, and you're looking for background and experience, et cetera. I've been in the real estate business for 50 years, so maybe that qualifies as a doctorate. I don't know. But so I've been pretty involved in that business. And, some lots after the hurricane may not be buildable. This may be one of them. I know the lot for sale or is for sale right next door. Maybe they can combine the two. I don't know. The only other thing I had, and I just bring it up, is I looked at the tax records of the property. And see the highlighted property? The seller received a $50,000 exemption for at least 9 years. That's $450,000. As of yesterday, he's still homesteading his property in Michigan. So us that comply, live by the rules, et cetera, are going to expect him to do the right thing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Anybody else would like to speak for public comment? Albert, do you want to tell us what the square footage is on that house, just to answer?
Sure. Part of the today's agenda packet has D1 and D2, which are enlarged floor plans of the proposed house. Total square footage under air is 1601.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but 1075 and 747 is 1800.
It's not 1601.
Under air square footage.
So part of that is not under air.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
The top floor, if you look at the third floor plan, which is we're trying to keep first floor being the ground, second floor being the first level, third floor. The top floor has a large deck. That's part of just the master bedroom suite. So that's how we got to that square footage.
Question, Albert.
Lot coverage is also less than the 40%, which is, I believe, when I calculated that on the ground footprint on the roof and surrounded by walls, our lot coverage is actually falling at 38%.
Okay. Patrick?
Your understanding of your property survey, does that 5-foot walkway or cut-through still exist?
On the survey, it shows a 5-foot walkway west of the property line. That's also part of the survey that's shown in part of the submittal packet.
Yeah. For the record, Jim Ank, yes, that 5-foot walkway will stay.
And part of that side setback is 7.5, like any other house would have a 7.5. So we are complying with the current 7.5 setback that would be required for a lot of this width.
Okay. Any other questions, Jane?
Is that walkway deeded, or is it just,
That I could not tell you if it's deeded or not to anybody. It's not deeded to him.
Okay. Okay. Any further questions for staff or the applicant? If there are none, would somebody like to make a motion? Or,
I would make a motion. I do have one question. I think I saw the staff recommendation was approved with conditions, but I didn't see the conditions. Maybe I missed it.
we're at the point of a
I mean,
motion.
it might be the normal conditions that the building permit.
The staff conditions were that they can be found on page 5 of the staff report. Its approval of this variance does not give the applicant an undeniable right to a permit approval. Development or redevelopment of the property must comply with all applicable requirements of the Fort Myers Beach Comprehensive Plan and LDC in effect at time of permit approval, except as specifically modified herein. And the second condition is no encroachment, including roof overhangs, may be closer than 40 inches to any property line, and that has to do with fire regulations, as we discussed previously with the building code.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I would make a motion to approve with the conditions just read into the
Conditions.
record.
I'll second that.
Okay, there is a motion by Doug and a second by Jane to approve the request, the variance with the conditions listed in the staff report. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, your vote, Doug?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
And I vote yes. Congratulations, thank you very much. Okay, I'm looking at our comp plan consultant back here, Eddie, and he has to leave in about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So do we go ahead and move on to the flood ordinance, or do we skip that and
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
think that the flood ordinance is under some deadlines.
Okay.
I
Oh,
would
yeah.
look to Kristen to see clarification of what those deadlines are.
It shouldn't be difficult, so never mind. So hold tight, Eddie, and Kristen's been here all day too. Okay, our next item is ordinance 2403. This is a flood ordinance. It's an ordinance of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending Article 4 of Chapter 6 of the Land Development Code of the town of Fort Myers Beach to 1, require all manufactured homes installed or replaced in special flood hazard areas to be elevated at or above at least the base flood elevation plus 1 foot. 2, adopt the November 17th, 2022 flood insurance study for Lee County, Florida, and incorporated areas. 3, changes to substantial improvement and substantial damage determinations. And 4, amend the definitions of market value and substantial damage in order to comply with recent changes to the community rating system necessary to retain a Class 8, which assist the town in maintaining its Class 5 community rating system designation, providing for codification, severability, Scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and an effective date. Whew, okay.
A lot.
Hi,
Good morning.
Chris. Good morning.
Kristen Schumacher, Town Fort Myers Beach, floodplain manager. As you have known, we've been bringing the flood ordinance before you for a couple of times, but we had to expedite in getting it amended for, we have a CRS cycle visit coming up, and with the flood maps, even though they were automatically auto updated, and the trailer parks, we have to get these passed through before our cycle visit to maintain or to move beyond a CRS rating Class 8.
Mm-hmm. Krista, before we go any further, You know, I think you've probably had one of the lousiest jobs the last year and a half. People have hated you and yelled and screamed and everything else, but I hope you know that we really do appreciate all the work that you've been doing.
Thank
You're
you.
an essential part of the rebirth of Fort Myers Beach, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm always here to help.
Yes, I know. So thank you for that. Okay, questions for Kristen? Who'd like to go first? Anybody?
One quick little comment. I had asked Albert as a favor to kind of peruse through the ordinance and see if there was anything that either was concerning or conflicts. And I agree with him. Everything that's in there is beneficial. It's a good thing. One thing that he did point out when it comes to the definition of substantial and substantial, it should be cross-referenced because there's another section of the code that also has that. So just make sure that you guys also change those definitions to be consistent.
Yes, that's our plan. I need to get this passed forward for our cycle visit. Once we get this passed forward, I have to go back and work with the state to amend the other section that's in the
The one,
The-
yeah, it was included in the
Yeah.
first packet round, yeah.
It was included last time.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to amend and take comments once this comes through. This was the emergency to do, and we're not really complete yet.
Okay. Thanks.
So this will come back to us again?
Yes.
Hallelujah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Kristen? Doug? Don?
No, ma'am.
Jane? No. Jim? Scott?
I'll make a motion.
Do I need to? Yeah. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank
Is there
you.
anybody who'd like to make public comment on this? Okay. No public comment? Now, I'll take a motion.
I move that we recommend approval of ordinance 24-03 regarding the flooding ordinance.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
Second, Sutter.
Okay, so there's a motion by Jim and a second by Don. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none. Do I have to do a roll call for ordinance? Yeah. Your vote, Jim?
Yes.
And Don?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Yes. But motion carries unanimously. Boys, we should have just done you right up at the front. You could have been gone and doing stuff that was, thank you, Kristen. Congratulations, and thank you for all your hard work. Okay, Eddie, you've got the floor. The next item on our agenda is the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan updates.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to be back. I assume staff has sent the LPA, what is 100 and something page packet for your review. I'm gonna break it down just a little bit, like in summary in the beginning. We did not make as much changes to the elements that you see at our not chart form, just because a lot of those were just state requirements, and we're really, from the last LP, there weren't really much comments on those. They were like, well, unless you tell us something specific on them, there was no need to really rehash it, especially since a lot of those changes were state mandated requirements or things that you're going to need as a consequence of FEMA funding or so forth, especially with conservation. Now, the three elements that you do see in chart form, we thought that that would be a way to kind of more easily direct you to see what changes there are instead of having you dig through an entire thing. It's like, what are we actually changing? As your consultant, I want to say that we're pretty much at full circle. What we did from the last time was, in the very beginning, we had, okay, let's change the density, and then the last time, it got through, and then the last time we were like, let's not change the density, but let's still deal with some of the issues that we had already previously identified, which were like, well, our spread of uses really kind of drew out the traffic along the entire island. which is why as we understood it, you wanted to keep the different mixed-use areas. And the other aspect that was really at the forefront of a lot of discussion was we have a LDR where you couldn't come in with a different use because of the restrictions already in there. So what you see in here is that we took a general use standpoint, which is what other communities have done. I can speak to even one out of state where you take this from a comprehensive plan point and say, okay, these are general retail or so-and-so uses, and you fix the actual uses that you need within the LDR or UDR, however, UDC or however code we want to call it there. The mapped area, all those districts have changed based on your feedback and what you had instructed to do. So you'll see that some of the districts shrunk, some got elongated a bit more, and I know I'm trying to do this quickly as an overview given the time limitation, so forgive me and stop me if you want me to elaborate on a specific point as I'm going through these items. We did have extensive discussion with staff on how kind of what the next step should be, and yeah, let's see, I covered that point. Perhaps one of the best things we can do is really just go into those three particular elements and to try to solidify where we're going, because we've been at this a very long time. And
Yes, we have.
It just feels like from my end, we keep moving forward towards something, and then we say, oh wait, that's not it. But really, your application of code, and what you saw even today with all the variances, those are part of your LDR, LDC. And from my standpoint as a consultant, I do want to advise you that it's probably best to just nip that in the bud now to solve the problem you really want to solve and go in the direction you really want to do. Treat the comprehensive plan as a vision that as a community recovering from a devastating hurricane, loosen it where you need to loosen it so that you have the option to be nimble as a community, and tighten it where you want to tighten it in your land development regulation so that you have that option at that point to allow you to say, wait, this is an investment in our community. We don't necessarily want to say no. We want the time to evaluate it and then say yes or no. What you have with a current comp plan is, in some cases, an automatic no. And as a recovering community, that is something I don't necessarily want to advise you down towards, if that makes sense. And with that, I know it's a huge document. I want to go into a little
Eddie,
bit more.
can you point out an example of that conflict where you're saying that the comp plan would give you an immediate no, and what you have suggested creates an ability to be nimble?
I think the use is the biggest and easiest example to point to, because you want to have that ability to have that diversity of uses, and your comprehensive plan kind of meant that. We noticed that really right even before Hurricane Ian hit, because really early on we're like, well, we have that bank example that we bring up all the time, where we actually had to bring it here. It's like, well, according to our own rules here in the town, this bank wanted to open a branch, which is not always the easiest thing to convince the bank to do. And we're like, because even though it's a commercial use, it's more intensive than what was already there, and so it became an automatic no, and you had to go through like a whole series of hoops at that point. Your comprehensive plan, your LDR combined together created that situation. And so very early on, we were given instruction from you to try to disentangle that. One of the recommendations that came out of that, even before Hurricane Ian hit, was you need to loosen that up. Now, let's take that another step past this from a post-hurricane standpoint. You can say, I don't want specific uses. You can make certain things conditional, but conditional uses generally, like, you can put that in LDR. I did that last night at another planning commission. I can't stress that enough that, if you're trying to get investment, sometimes you have to loosen it up and tighten it on the, on the actual zoning code side.
Okay. So would you like to start with the future land use element?
Sure.
Okay, all right. I had spoken with Sarah about this, this is so important. We need to take a deep dive. Let's recognize that Eddie has a time constraint today, so we'll be continuing this item to our next meeting for discussion. And so could we go page by page, and if somebody has something highlighted or something caught their eye that needs to be discussed, we just bring it up? How does that sound? Okay, it sounds great. So on page 1 of the future land use element, did anybody have any comments on that? Sarah, I'm going to include you. If you had any comments or questions or think you need clarification on something. Okay, I'll move on to page 2. I don't have anything on page 2 either. Anybody have anything on page 2? It's all the way at the end, Jane, like to page 200.
Page 297.
There you go. Nothing on page 2, which takes us through natural resources. There is a new policy suggested at the very end of page 2. The town, together with the private sector, shall consider proactive steps and pilot programs to adapt for sea level rise and storm surges, including but not limited to preserving transportation options, increasing residential building resiliency, preserving landscaping and residential building aesthetics, and preserving water quality.
Right.
I liked the addition of this.
Yeah, thank you. What we want to see the town kind of think about in this regard is this become kind of a vision aspect that you want to take forward in your LDR. This gives a directive to staff then to think about things like, how do we deal with the drainage underneath the roadways? How do we deal with freeboard regulations? As we think about how we understand the impact of hurricanes and weather-related events more, there's going to be new technologies and considerations of even updates to the building code like we saw in December of this past year. And so this becomes something that's a little bit more broad, but gives staff enough direction to say, we're going to look at this further in the LDR in this direction that makes this consistent with becoming a more resilient community.
So there's another new policy on page 2, which has to do with parking. And the redevelopment of surface lots, and anybody have any comments on that? Okay. So on page 3, no new policies, some changes. No questions or comments on page 3? So I'm going to assume if you all don't say anything that you're good with it.
Yep.
Okay? How about page 4? Two new policies.
Yeah,
Yep.
I had one. I just had a comment on one. 12 months seems, I know it's hard to get things done.
Which one or what page?
The new policy on page 4, the land
Oh, yeah.
development regulations
Yes.
shall be amended to be consistent with the comp plan within 12 months of any comp plan update.
Yeah.
That just seems like a long time given what we're doing here. So I know it's hard to get things done. We've been talking to you for a long time, and we continue to work through this, but it just, I know, and it may be too much to ask, but it just seems like that's super long time to make comp plan adjustments and then, have 12 months.
And then wait a
to-
year.
Yeah.
What do you think, sir?
No, I think that that's an appropriate amount of time because we'd want to do this as a cohesive plan. We've been chipping away and we have a Frankenstein plan. We really need to look at this as a cohesive development code And I think that that will take some time. I don't think we should need to rush that.
Okay, and I don't want to rush it. I guess, is there, I think of the comp plan amendments as being like, there might be 100 of them, right? I mean, there might be a lot of things that are kind of changed.
Mhm.
And it's a year before we change, like, could we take them in chunks? Hey, maybe, it just seems like there's some low-hanging fruit maybe that would be able to change the regulation a little quicker. Maybe not.
So my goal really is to look at this as one unit. We can make changes section by section, but we really need to look at the whole thing together. And I don't want staff and any consultant that we hire to feel like we can't look at the entire thing. I think that we're going to start on it as soon as we possibly can, and we can make changes as we're going, but I don't want to say that we're going to complete that process in too short of a time to feel like we've done an adequate job and really made the fixes that are necessary and really looked at the things. And that includes, we do need to do outreach. So I think we don't want to give that process any short shrift.
Okay, and then one last follow-up then. So really, the comprehensive plan those updates aren't really in effect until the regulations are in effect. So
No, the comprehensive plan will be in effect. Then we start on the land development code. So the comprehensive plan is really vision. The land development code is truly implementation of some of that vision, but the comprehensive plan will take effect when we're looking at CPDs, RPDs, variances, special exceptions that require you to look at those specific code sections.
So without those regulations, we could still impart the vision?
Yes,
for
yeah,
CPD.
certainly.
Okay. Thank you.
Eddie, I'm curious, why did you eliminate policy 4B1? I mean, as I read it, I thought, what were we talking about specifically? What were we talking about? But I'm curious why you eliminated it.
Because the wording was simplified and
Okay. Another new policy with land use categories, the following land use designations shall be applied to the future land use map, and then goes into all of the land use categories. Any questions on that or comments on that?
I do.
Yep.
On the previous category called mixed residential,
Yep.
we allowed for some commercial uses. And I know that we've included a new category called mixed use. Have you and staff really looked at all the properties that fall within the mixed residential category? And that if we take away the commercial component, no one is affected by this from a negative standpoint where they're losing that opportunity for commercial uses?
Yes, I think we've gone back and forth on this throughout the entire process in terms of how much along the corridor and how deeply past the, extending from the corridor it should be. What we're really also trying to do is also not create a situation where everything can be mixed use. So in our opinion, our recommendation to you is strike a balance the best way you see fit. This is just our recommendation that based on the current map that we provided, there is a degree of separation there that allows you to have that preservation of the mixed-use properties.
But I guess the question is, and I get what you're saying, but I guess the question is, if someone had a future land use category that allowed for commercial, and we're taking that away from them, okay, Senate bill says that we can't create any policies that are more restrictive. And that would be more restrictive than what we have today. So that's why I think you guys need to double check that map very clearly. And if it gets replaced with mixed use versus mixed residential, that's fine. They don't lose anything.
Right.
But if we just say, you used to be allowed to ask for commercial, you can't even ask anymore. That, to me, that's more restrictive.
Yeah, but I believe that we, from based on our review, I don't know if you can speak to it, Sarah. I don't recall there was any area where it was allowed for commercial that wouldn't be allowed for at this point.
Yeah, I will double check, but I think that in all of the areas where they could have any sort of commercial, there it's covered under the mixed as opposed to the medium. But
Did you get a chance to look at that to see if that's accurate?
I received it late last night and have not had a chance to review it, but I did want to say that the area shown as that theater arts mixed use district was previously on the previous future land use map that was already a boulevard district. So that was a commercial district. So it's
With those same streets that are in the current plan?
yeah. If we do a comparison of if we're looking at the snip from the email that we received showing this theater arts mixed use district, that's the same area that is currently on the map as Boulevard. So it was a commercial district separate from that neighborhood right there.
Yeah, can we make sure that next time around we have an updated map? I was looking for the map.
Yes, I actually realized that the map wasn't in there. I just emailed Mario about that and realized the map wasn't in there. So my apologies for that.
Yeah, my apologies as well. Yeah.
I have a question on the medium residential. So you have removed mobile homes but kept RV parks. Are the mobile home park not going to be able to rebuild? Or is that in a separate section?
I don't believe that they are able to rebuild due to the height restrictions required by FEMA regulation.
They just have to be raised, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the one that's
Gulfview Colony.
Gulfview Colony.
Has that been sold? I was under the impression that that is being developed differently.
So do we still have an RV park on this island?
No.
No, I don't think we
So
will.
why are we keeping both of those or not taking both of them out?
Yeah, I think there may be some on Pearl.
Wouldn't the distinction be that you've got a mobile home park is one thing, and those are permanent structures, whereas an RV park,
Oh, yes.
there's a storm coming, they evacuate, and so you're allowed to have this on a barrier island, whereas a mobile home park is permanent, very different.
Yeah, I mean, mobile home is a permanent structure with utilities to it, whereas an RV is not.
But they could be raised.
The manufactured home could be raised, yes.
Absolutely.
That's
Yes.
what the floodplain ordinance says.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering why it's taken out of here.
Yeah, generally, you would want to also look back at any conditions of state or federal aid the town is receiving as well. In many instances with FEMA money, you are going to be looking at whether or not you would be allowed to have mobile homes in the area that money was dedicated for. There may be restrictions based on the conditions of any grant or recovery money that you should be aware of. So in that regard, we could say what we want in a comprehensive plan, but if you receive money and there are conditions to that money, you are bound by the terms of that agreement of that assistance.
But I will double check and make sure that there aren't any existing mobile homes, anything that we. So I guess here's my question. We want to, in instances where we can, allow mobile homes to return. Do we want to allow new mobile homes? I mean, because I guess that would be a good question. Is that something that we want to include in our comprehensive plan as something that we want to maintain on the island?
But Sarah, generally for a barrier community, the state law actually kind of pushes against that, where
Yeah,
they
and I know
don't
that's
want
been the-
you to allow any new mobile homes.
Yeah, so
And
I mean, but that's why I'm
state
bringing it up. Like, I don't
statutes.
think this is something we want to encourage, and I know that this has been an issue in the past, but that's why I'm asking. Is there a reason we're wanting to maintain that use?
Well, I think if we go back to the floodplain ordinance that was before us, if you look at the language that's been changed, there were exemptions for mobile home parks.
Okay.
That have now been removed. So that plays into the mix. But I think what the floodplain ordinance says is, you're going to have a manufactured home, you're going to have to build it just from a structural standpoint. You're going to have to build it on columns or pilings that meet all code requirements. So I think the question, though, from Jane is valid in that very unlikely that it would occur. We understand that. But by saying outright you can't, again, is that more restrictive, and is that counter to the latest Senate bill? And I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think Jane's question is a valid question of just let's look into that.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I can look and see what if we have any remaining. I mean, but I think my question does still stand. Is there a reason if we don't see that we're sort of creating an issue by removing it? Is there a reason why we want to maintain it?
Well, I would just say the use of, say, like Pearl Street, or, Pearl Street, that would be requiring them to become something much more restrictive than what they have there. And the value of replacement would be a huge difference.
If our flood code, if we look through the flood code, though, and we find that it does not allow that, that we really don't have a good way to do that, do we feel comfortable removing it from the comprehensive plan? Or do we want to go ahead and maintain it and then get into the nitty-gritty with the land development code?
Well, I don't think we want to create a conflict of language between the two documents. I mean, if it's prohibited, then it probably ought to not be in the comp plan.
Okay, so,
And I think to your question, though, of some of the language that existed was to protect those existing parks. Do we want the proliferation of more parks and allow that elsewhere? I think the answer is no to that.
okay.
But I think it's just a question of if it did allow it, and if it's going to be more restrictive, we're not going to be consistent with that Senate bill. Let's be cognizant of that, but yeah, for sure.
Okay.
At least my opinion is we don't want more potential for mobile homes.
Okay.
They would have, the people who have that currently would have to go through a zoning change, which, you know, would be no problem, but we would not be forcing them to do that. If there is a use, it should be accounted for. If it's been bought and they've changed their zoning, then no, we don't have to have it, but currently it exists.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We're on going to page 6 with the Coconut Mixed Use District.
Yeah, I've got a question with regards to the Times Square mixed-use district. So I can't recall the older maps. Does Times Square encompass all of downtown as a district?
Could you repeat that? I'm hard of hearing, remember?
I'm looking at policy 1B5, Times
Okay.
Square mixed-use district. Okay? And where I'm looking at this and I go A, B, and then we get to the intensity, FAR. And we talk about 2.5 fronting on Old San Carlos between 5th and 1st Street. So to me, that's downtown.
Right.
And then we talk about the Times Square pedestrian plaza, which is different. And then the 1.5 for properties on Estero and fronting Bayfront. So that's at the other end of downtown. So that's not Times Square.
No.
So that's where the confusion is.
Right, so we're trying to redefine the district boundaries. Just by giving a name, we could call it downtown, call it mixed use, but it's just redrawing the boundary for that based on particularly feedback from developers as well that we had interviewed. We're happy to adjust as that's needed, but that's kind of our recommendation is to kind of create a cohesive core.
So right now, what you envision is Times Square all the way to the bay, that basically, with the two anchors on each end, all that being called the Times Square district.
Right, and to spread the butter out just a little bit more so that you don't have it hyper concentrated on one corner.
Okay, so understanding that, my question for you is from an FAR standpoint. Do you know what the allowed FAR is for Times Square? So everybody fronting the pedestrian plaza, what it currently is today versus what would be allowed? That's where I'm not.
Your current regulations are a little wishy-washy in that it's not entirely clear, but it does put a maximum at 2.5. So what we tried to do here was kind of create a gradient that makes sense from a district design standpoint. But you do have one where it says it's like 2.5-ish, but it's dependent on a bunch of factors, and it doesn't actually tell you which properties are subject to that 2.5. We think they're really difficult for a developer or property owner to come in and be like, this is what the code actually says about my property. What we're trying to do here is then create that definition so that there's predictability for both staff, the LPA, and also the commission in approving these projects. If they point to a specific parcel, that parcel number is such, it's at this address, and it's a 0.5 or 1.0, or however y'all decide. We do recommend that you can change the FAR to what you feel is fit as long as you're not reducing beyond what they previously were, but it's so muddled that I'm not sure how to interpret it, Ms. Attorney, in terms of some of it, it's really hard to determine. Did they actually have 2.5 to begin with? Because I can't derive it from your zoning code or your comprehensive plan for some of these properties.
And I think we need to just look at this in more detail. My understanding also for Times Square, there was like a 1.4. And I think right now when I read this, it pretty much says anything not defined as 2.5 or 1.5, you're at 1.
Right.
And I clearly recall the 1.4 applying to some portions of Times Square. So I think we need to relook at that and make sure that we, again, let's not reduce what was existing.
Yeah. We would recommend from our end that keep the structure, change the number as you see fit, create whatever the result is, create that predictability for the property owner and the parcel itself as kind of like the guiding tenet of how you want this constructed. That would be ultimately how you want to deal with the FAR for individual parcels. It's very much a policy decision. We're here to advise. But in terms of the structure, you want that, I would say up front, you will want them to have that predictability that they don't necessarily have entirely now. So that's where my advice is coming from to the LPA.
I had the same section highlighted, mostly because I found it confusing. The 2.5, even the rewrite was confusing because you talk about going all the way down San Carlos between 5th and 1st, and then, but then you go to 1.5 for properties fronting Estero Boulevard and the Bayfront Pedestrian Plaza, which the Bayfront Pedestrian Plaza to me is at the end of Old San Carlos.
In other codes or plans that we've written, instead of trying to put it in text, we put a visual image with a map, and then we drew, and we would, just highlight, okay, these particular parcels, it's this part of the district, it's this FAR. If that will help, we can work on that, and instead of having the text, we will amend the text to say,
Or in addition
per this
to.
map,
Yep.
or as shown below, something that will give you that guidance
I think
reference.
that would be very helpful.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and work together with staff to kind of define that so that you have a clearer picture.
Okay. Were there any other questions about that? How about the Coconut Village mixed use? Or this?
I really, really would like to have a map.
Yeah, because you're trying to
for each of
envision where
these,
everything
and
is.
it by parcel, so don't cut it in the middle, but cut it by parcel. So every parcel is identified in one of the areas so that we can understand.
My comment would be, so you're not going to split, the line would never split down the middle of a parcel, right?
Yeah, but I think what
In or
Dawn's saying
out.
is just so we know
Yeah,
that this
when you-
part, where
Yeah, because
everything
if you
is.
say First to Fifth Street, is it the one on the corner, or
Yep.
is it, I mean, I'm just, in my mind,
Yeah.
just thinking, I understand.
Right,
Does
but
the
line-
map already exist?
Yeah,
It's just not here.
Unfortunately,
That's okay.
My
So you know
apologies.
what?
We thought we had.
Let's
I
not go
thought we
any
had
further.
that,
Let's
yeah.
not go any further. You wanted to leave by 12:15. It's 10 after now.
Yes.
So how about we come back to this with maps?
That sounds good, and we'll make sure that gets emailed over to Sarah to distribution. I apologize for
great.
that.
No?
Yeah.
Don't worry. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any objection to that suggestion? Okay. Where's my agenda? Because I'm just trying to think, do I need to continue this to the next meeting? And
It was on the agenda.
Sarah, you said we're going to put this on at the front of the next meeting?
Yes.
Because this is just going to take some time, and unless we devote the time to do it, and I hate it at the end of a meeting, because at the end of the meeting, we're already like, it's a lot. So, so if I could ask that even if things have to be moved off of that second meeting, this should be the number one priority. Does anybody disagree with that? So we can just deal with it? Okay. And, you know, Scott's right, we need those visualizations, we need the maps. And it might be helpful to have the previous map as well. You know,
I believe
for that comparison.
Right. And
Okay.
I know those would be available those from staff and in our previous discussions as well, because I think I have shown maybe at this point like 5 to 7 iterations over time
Yes.
on the screen.
Yeah.
Which is why at this point I'm like, oh, we are happy to make any adjustments you want. I think we just need to path forward, because that predictability helps us,
And everybody.
help the town go out and get investment into the town to further aid its recovery.
So far, we haven't been short on that.
No, and that's a wonderful thing to see from my end. I was driving in, and it's very encouraging to see from my end. Now, my thought is create the predictable rules and take the next step. But first, really get your vision onto the board, get your comprehensive plan done so that staff can work on the LDR that will reduce the amount of variance requests you're seeing, and really just go at rewriting code to where you want and need it to be to further drive that reinvestment and recovery.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you. So we'll see you at our next meeting?
I should be here. I did have a conflict in the afternoon, so I had been emailing earlier today to see about either, about moving some folks around to.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
so-
thank you.
Anita, I wouldn't be,
Yes.
I wouldn't be opposed to having a separate workshop just dedicated to
I
to
agree.
this stuff and
I-
have
so
several
if-
hours, because
I agree.
I think it's a heavy lift, it's important.
It is a heavy lift. So, Sarah, go ahead.
Would it be better for us to have a different day than the 27th?
I think it might.
We just do,
all the people that come for a hearing on a
quasi-judicial and
variance and sit
legislative
through all
cases
this.
that need to happen on the 27th. We have a separate meeting scheduled just for the comprehensive plan on a
Yes,
different day.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be reaching out to you, or Kendra will be reaching out to you with dates and times, and we'll
Okay.
coordinate with Eddie.
Okay,
In the
that way,
meantime,
that'll
we'll-
be helpful for you as well.
Right. In the meantime, we'll get working on just some of the clarifications we already got.
Yeah, and we'll
from
get you-
today, and square that away, and so we can put some of these to rest.
And I'll send you all the
every-
links for the maps, and we'll get them on the website
Very
also.
good.
And guys, I apologize if I'm belaboring the point here, but I did look at the redevelopment zoning districts, and for Times Square, it allows for 1.8 FAR right now. So, and that's why it's important to look at this with a fine-tooth comb, because what's being proposed, they would have been at less than 1.8. So we have to make sure we don't have those conflicts.
Yeah, that also cross-reference the other parts of the code that don't explicitly call out Times Square, but it would apply to Times Square, 'cause that brings it above the 1.8. So that's where we had an issue there, because there are more general aspects there too within the code that could be interpreted to apply to Times Square, whether you intend to or not. If that's not the intent, you've got 1.8, reduce it to 1.8, it is, but clarify the other portion of the text where it applies a little bit more broadly. You can't
So
take,
just
yeah.
since we've brought this to your attention, you'll know it's a point of concern,
Mhm.
and you could address it the next time.
Right.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
Sarah, when we said the maps, not just to include them in here, but if we could have physical old and new
Okay.
for each of us?
Yeah, so we'll include them in the agenda package that you get, and so you'll have a hard copy also.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this is advertised as a public hearing. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say right now? And thank you so much for not getting up. As you giggle. All right, so are we going to continue this to a date uncertain? What, Nancy? Or can we just say we're finished with this?
Generally, when we try to say that we're continuing it to a date certain, there are advertising requirements for individual property owners, and we try to be more efficient with that when we assign a date certain, because then we wouldn't have to
But
re-advertise.
That's
to
not
others.
what we're doing with this.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we can
So-
just leave it alone.
Yes, it can just be advertised again.
Perfect.
You could advertise it as a continuance, doesn't need to be to a date certain.
But
We
it's
haven't.
just, it says update, so we were updated on one portion and we'll be updated again. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, which is administrative agenda. Anybody over in administration have anything that we need to hear about? Okay, how about LPA members' items and reports? Scott, anything?
No. Happy Mardi Gras.
I'm happy about that. I'm surprised you're here. Jim?
No comments.
Okay, how about you, Jane?
Well, yes, I think I do. I had a bit of a hard time with both of these, A and B, being continued again. And to me, it's hard for me to explain to the general public that does ask, why is, number one, the root ship company able to function without a COP and just continue to do business without the proper permits? And so I did call Frankie on this yesterday and said, that, in my opinion, if I were operating a business that didn't have the proper permits, I would be shut down. And his response was basically that the reasoning for the continuance is because it could not be approved in its current location, and that so and so that it is in the process of being moved, but the Coast Guard hasn't moved out yet, so they're continuing to get it to that location. I still have a very big hard time with this because I don't think I could continue to do something that I didn't have a permit for. But I just want the people to know that, staff, were you prepared for that hearing?
We provided the applicant a letter of insufficiency regarding the application that we received. It was not sufficient to move forward to hearing.
And so they had prepared for it to be on one meeting. We continued it to this one. They still didn't come into compliance with bringing the information forward, and so now we're going to do it again, so they can just, they're getting a free 6 months or something out of this?
I thought our attorney said that they were pulled. Were not both of those pulled?
They were pulled,
Okay.
but my point is,
Right, yeah.
why?
Right.
I mean, they're operating without permits.
That's a
and we're allowing
compliance act.
them-
That's code enforcement
That's,
compliance.
and we're allowing them to continue. I just want to voice my problem with it because it appears that we're in compliance with them continuing without a permit, and I'm
In
not.
cahoots.
In
Right.
cahoots, yes.
Cahoots is the
We-
word you're looking
That-
for.
And we are
yeah,
not.
and because people have asked, why is the town allowing this to happen? And I don't have a good answer for that. So that's my
And
point.
you still don't?
I still don't. And I just wanted to make that statement that it's not okay with me.
Anything else, Jane?
Well, while we're at it, the pink shell also has been 2 variants. Were you not prepared for your hearing today?
No, the issue there is that they they are requesting a vacation and they're proposing to move their easement. And we've run into some difficulty with that process. So we're working through that issue at this time, and they have to go together because what they're asking to do closes, through their special exception, closes off their easement. So we are trying to get through that process. We had, I organized a meeting last week where we spoke with, we had the attorneys involved in Public Works and Parks and Rec and Environmental to discuss the issue and how we move forward with it. So we are trying to get that resolved so that everything can move forward at the same time.
And isn't it in here that in our packet of today, doesn't it say that the town will not close off easements?
And that's part of the discussion.
Okay.
But I think the same issue exists. Isn't there something that's already been done there?
Yes,
Okay.
that is also part of the issue.
Okay. So property owner has done something that is not
Are all the pools
compliant.
already in and everything's already done?
The pools that they were proposing were all actually landward of the CCCL, so they didn't need the special exception for those. I cannot speak to the permits that they've received for those. I certainly hope that they've received all of the appropriate permits, although I don't review those aspects. What I can say is special exception-wise, anything that's beyond the CCCL, that is occurring without, they may be at-risk permits, meaning that they are getting them and
Because fences
Then-
are all up and everything else, pavers are all in place, chairs are all out there.
yeah, so that we're trying to resolve the issue.
I have one other question. When I did walk the property, even though it wasn't going to be put on today, there are two fixed structures that appear to have footers and everything. I mean, one has chairs all the way around it. What are those? I
Are
mean,
they-
one,
are
I
they-
counted 75 feet from the fence line to the structure, out, just sitting out there. And it has like, I don't know, 15 bar stools at it that are attached to the thing. What would they need that stools around it, and what is it, and how did it get permitted out there?
So some structures were brought to my attention this week that have utilities to them. Staff is trying to determine if those utilities were there previously, if they were allowed to have these, if these structures actually existed in those locations. I am planning to talk with environmental today because they've also been talking with the state about these structures.
Yeah, I'll send you pictures of them. They're quite secure there, and they certainly couldn't be pulled back.
I know that some of the concern that we typically have with structures in the EC has to do with the turtles. And I know that everything that they were requesting to have that were going to be permanent was supposed to be landward of the vegetated dune to prevent turtles from crawling into them, having an orientation, a disorientation issue.
Right.
So I know that is an aspect, but these things have changed a bit since the original application. So that's why I need to talk with environmental today.
Well, even further than that, I mean, my understanding is you can't put palm trees out there. How can you put a building?
I am going to be looking into it.
Thanks.
Patrick, anything?
Yes, request a favor from staff when it comes to addressing the comp plan when we come back to it. Can we, I just like working this way where we start with the general, go to the specific. This is coming back to us, and I'm not even sure where we stand. So we had discussions, we had joint meeting with council. I don't know if there was clear direction, but I'd like to kind of know this is where we were, and generally speaking, we're making changes to these things, and that's the direction we're going in, because I could tell you that I'm on the LPA, and I wasn't even sure if these activity centers were still in play or not. I was still scratching my head of like, oh, I guess they're still in play. But I really didn't know from our last joint meeting. So maybe a little recap, a little
It's a good idea.
where direction we're going, and these are the proposed changes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Don, anything?
Nothing, just a comment. We should use Crescent Street to exit the island and avoid the pedestrian crosswalk that is causing me to spend an hour and a half to get off the island.
We're gonna have a pickle.
Doug, anything?
I would just like to make a plug, I guess, for in the comprehensive plan, and I'm not sure what goal or objective it would fall under, maybe resiliency or environmental, but a plug for a policy that encouraged, and I know we already do, but reinforce our encouragement of using native plants as a way of reducing irrigation and fertilizers and insecticides and all these things that you have to have healthy non-native plants. Whereas native plants, you don't need any of that stuff. And I'm just not sure where it falls in a comprehensive plan, but.
Certainly. Thank you.
Oh, one other thing. Somebody called me the other day and told me about the palm trees in Times Square are not doing well. They don't look healthy. And we couldn't think that it would be a watering issue because of all the rain we've had. But is there somebody looking into those plants, or who should we call?
Yeah. Public Works or potentially the town manager.
Okay, thanks.
Sarah, you and I had this discussion just to sort of piggyback on what Jane is saying. I think it's a real disservice to the residents of this community to see 450 Harbor Court and the Pink Shell both on our agenda. The onus is on them to fulfill the requirements, to get what they're asking for. And so, members of the audience, members of the public come in anticipation of it. It's just completely unsatisfactory to me. And quite honestly, I keep hearing Dan Allers in my head when he says, we want to be able to save everybody, but we can't. And it's true. So, if the Rude Shrimp, and I don't know them, I've been to their business a couple of times. It's nothing personal. But if there was not a permittable use in the first place, I have no idea why they're there. And in the second place, this delay, while operations continue, the irritating thing for resident B or A or whatever, a resident on the island that is trying to do something with their home doesn't get that leniency.
Right.
I mean, I couldn't put my fence up and then just wait. And I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's a slap in the face, and it should stop. I mean, if you're not prepared to come forward with your request, then wait. But you're wasting our time, you're wasting staff time, you're wasting the residents' time that take the time to come and participate in the meetings. I'm hoping that the town council is hearing this, because some direction should be given so that this stops. The optics are horrible. The optics are, if you're a business or a big developer, you have our attention. But if you just happen to live on Denora and you've got an issue, well, get in line. And I know that that's not necessarily true, but it's how people are feeling. Okay.
They have no incentive to
None.
not keep asking for
None.
continuance.
Exactly, exactly.
If they have a shut notice that they're going to have to stop, maybe they will comply and submit everything.
Bring the thing up.
Okay, I got that off my chest. So like I said, I hope somebody who can do something about that hears that message, and that it matters.
Can I give
LPA attorney items?
Can I give a really quick public service announcement?
Yes.
Everybody, please go on the Lee Property Appraisers and make sure that your address is correct. Make sure that your mailing address on there is an address where you can actually get mail. We're getting a lot of postcards returned. We're not sure why they're all getting returned. They're not all from the beach. Some of them are out of state, but we're not sure why we're getting so many returned postcards. So if everybody listening to the meeting, please go on Lee Property Appraisers, check and make sure that your mailing address is correct.
I wonder if it's because so many people, like me, filled out temporary change of address because we were living someplace else. And, yeah, okay. All right, thank you, Sarah. Nancy, do you have any items?
No items.
Okay. And anything for next month, next meeting you want to give us an advance on, or?
Sounds like it won't be comp plan, but we do have several cases.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you all. Oh, no, it's not it. Do we have public comment again? No, we don't. Okay. So that's it for today. Thank you all for coming and joining us on whatever you're watching at home. And may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. A motion, we stand adjourned at 12:30.
Anita,
Thank you all.
your properties